On the street, a man captured on video camera addresses passersby. He asks what they would do if they suddenly received 100 million won. The girl says that it is impossible to buy a house for that kind of money. The man thinks that he will probably buy a new car. Another girl says she would put all her money into a savings account. The man with the microphone then asks passersby what would happen if they became the richest people on the planet. It is difficult for a man to answer. The girl thinks that maybe she should spend the rest of her life doing nothing. The other girl will first want to know how to get rich like that. Here are some of the responses received. The man asking these questions is the first and youngest Korean to be officially recognized as the richest person in the world. And the host asks him to share a secret. There are even rumors that he can see the future. He says that this doesn't happen, but at the same time he sees something. In the studio, besides the film crew, there is another person whom only he can see. This is a woman dressed apparently in Indian costume. An eagle sits on his staff. He's leaving. The richest man watches the radiant flight of the eagle. He is just an ordinary investor who just got lucky. Kyle Moore was unemployed and recently returned from service. For some reason, the army eagle keeps appearing in his dreams. This destroyed his great dream. Kyle lived with his mother in a small one-room basement apartment, but life wasn't always so difficult. I had a father who owned a profitable business and a mother who now makes a living by any means necessary, but always remains kind and elegant as a flower. With such parents, he grew up as if in a greenhouse. Kyle visits his friend Marco, a figurine collector, and finds that his life hasn't changed at all. He counters that his collection has doubled, but he's had a lot of figurines since school, so it's hard to tell the difference. Marco says Kyle is still as absent-minded as ever. Kyle says that Marco, despite being poor, received a good education, which allows him to work as a tutor and make life easier for his parents. Kyle will likely put the topic of higher education on hold for a while. He thanks Marco for spending time with Kyle's mother on New Year's Eve. Marco says she's like a mother to him too. He asks her how Kyle's service went and says that there's not much to talk about with a man who's just been discharged from the army. For some reason, Marco asks if Kyle wants to be even more jealous. He found the keyword for the Bantcoin wallet, sold his character in Lutnia, and received cryptocurrency in exchange. Kyle recalls that the price for this character rose to 50 million won. Marco said that his life was cut short when he lost it. She discovered it while cleaning out the toy box. Yesterday, this amount was worth $1,120. At today's exchange rate, $1 is approximately equal to 1,100 won. It turned out to be almost 1.5 million. $1,120 is the price of one Bantcoin. So if Marco has 11,000 Banto coins, that's 13,500 million won. If Kyle is jealous, he should admit it. Marco also had a hard time comprehending all of this. But the truth is that he was so surprised that he couldn't even feel happy. Kyle asks him for 100 million. Marco refuses. He has already put some of his real estate up for sale on the stock exchange, and at this rate, the price will rise even more. If Kyle knew, it would be harder for him to play. He played with it, and then Marco convincingly presented his character. He demands his share back, and Marco asks how much it is. Kyle tries to remember. Then he sees something from the window. This is the same eagle. This isn't the first time Kyle has seen him. The eagle takes off and flies straight into Marco's room. It is surrounded by a dazzling glow. Kyle sees pillars of fire appear on the wall. They begin to turn into letters. Marco asks what's going on. In turn, Kyle asks if Marco knows what Mountain Hill is. This is the currency exchange office where Marco now keeps his banknotes. Kyle asks if he is safe, if there are rumors of impending bankruptcy, and the words Mountain Hill and bankruptcy appear in the light of the lantern in front of him. Kyle saw this eagle in letters in the army. Perhaps this is not a hallucination, and all this is real. Kyle tells Marco to sell all the Banto coins. He can't explain it. He just lets Marco believe him. Marco agrees. He was going to sell them anyway. But after that, Kyle has to explain everything to her. The vision disappeared. Kyle wonders how he knows the name of a traffic circle he's never heard of. Perhaps he just learned about it somewhere before. Suddenly, Marco discovers something. Mountain Hill's servers just went down. Kyle asks what's going on with the coins. Marco sold them at the last minute. Now you know what the problem is. It might just be a maintenance issue. It turned out that the servers were running, but all user accounts were empty. Marco asks what's going on, and Kyle promises to tell him the truth. He doesn't know what to say. Marco asks not to keep him in the dark and to tell him the story. Kyle says he believes he has gained the ability to see the future. A year ago, while still in the army, I was at a mortar range. He was asked to stop being so careless and listen carefully. Suddenly, Kyle saw an eagle. She got up from the tree and flew towards him. A glow appeared in front of Kyle. He asked the other soldiers if they had seen the eagle. It just flew over their heads, but no one saw anything. Kyle couldn't understand how it was possible to miss such a colossus. Suddenly, In the light of the lantern, he saw the inscription KM 188. Explosion. Kyle suggested it might be augmented reality technology, but nothing like that happened during training. Meanwhile, the same mine was being prepared for launch. When a person instinctively feels that his life is in danger, the body reacts faster than the mind. Kyle ordered the soldiers to lie down, and the mine exploded. Kyle told Marco this. He says he was very lucky because, even though he was so close, he was not hurt. There were casualties in the accident, but thanks to a cryptic warning, Kyle survived. The doctor said the trauma he suffered in the accident had caused some distortions in his memory. In any case, if Kyle experienced this twice, it's no longer a coincidence, but a superpower. Kyle asks why Marco believes this so easily. Kyle shouldn't forget the mindset that anime brings. Even if a cute elf appeared before Marco right now, he'd believe it. Kyle suggests getting to work. His share is approximately 1,500,000,000 won. When Marco sold his character in Lutenia, he also sold a low-level character, Kyle. Of the 11,000 Banta coins he received, 1,000 went to Kyle, representing approximately 9% of his 13,500,000,000. Kyle threatens to burn all of Marco's figurines if he doesn't get the money. He says Kyle didn't want to give him the role, and even if Marco wanted to give him the role now, there would be tax issues. Kyle thinks that Marco wants to create an offshore zone or something like that. Asks him how he knows this, and Kyle replies that it is because he plans to become an economist. Marco's sister said the taxes from selling Banto coins could reach billions. He then created an offshore group on Della Island in the United States and registered the OTK company there. In any case, all that was left now was to enjoy the life of an eternal slacker, Kyle thought. Marco always did this. It must be hard to live selling in-game items. It's not that easy to make a living from this. Marco says that out of 13,500,000,000, Kyle will get his 1,500,000,000. He promises that he will definitely translate them for him. So, on the day he finished his service, thanks to a strange premonition and a somewhat naive but loyal friend, Kyle received 1,500,000,000 won. With this in mind, Marco remembered that he couldn't give the entire amount at once. Kyle knew that the money Marco was giving him was a gift. So once they moved from the offshore zone to Korea, they would have to pay a 20% tax. With the larger the amount, the more progressive the tax rate would be. Initially, Marco was going to send 500,000,000, and then, through his sister, find a way to transfer the remaining 740,000,000. Kyle wonders where he should start with money. Maybe give his mother a vacation and buy her some new clothes. Go to the department store. Here you can hear a woman loudly complaining about the cleaning lady poking her with a dirty rag. The customer demands that she immediately be forced to kneel and apologize before filing a complaint on the store's website, as some of those gathered find it hard to believe that such people still exist. The buyer says that even if the cleaning lady washed the floors 1,000 times, he still would not have saved up enough money to buy these shoes. The store manager apologizes. He orders the cleaning lady to kneel. Kyle can't believe his eyes. This is his mother. The buyer asks whether he will kneel or pay for the shoes. The manager demands that he immediately apologize to the customer if he does not want to be fired. Kyle's mother told him she worked in a department store call center. She will kneel, but Kyle takes his hand. He asks the client what could be so important that it would bring someone to their knees. She's outraged. Who is he to interfere? Is he really her son? Kyle answers in the affirmative. His mother says that this young man does not know her. Kyle asks her if she is ashamed of him. He is not ashamed of her. Kyle asks what's going on. The customer says the woman hit him on the shoe with a mop. This alone would bring someone's mother to her knees. The buyer claims that these shoes cost a whopping 600,000 won. Kyle gives him 600,000. Either she will apologize to her mother, take the money and leave, or he will take his precious shoes and leave with nothing. Filming is underway now. It would be better to at least take the money. Maybe I should throw them on the ground for her to pick up and let her kneel. The client apologizes. She takes the money and starts counting it. Kyle turns to the manager. He asks to take off the shoes from this lady, which were bought with his money. If Kyle doesn't see the shoes tomorrow, he'll report them stolen. He invites his mother to go with him. The buyer asks him why he is so greedy, because he doesn't even wear those shoes. Kyle says he doesn't really need them. He'll throw them out tomorrow. She adds, "Thanks for the advice, old lady." The customer screams that she is not an elderly woman, and the manager asks her to calm down. Outside, Kyle's mother tells him that if he talks to them now, maybe he can fix everything. Today is the first time something like this has happened. Kyle asks when she lost so much weight. Her mother says she feels well. She doesn't have to work where she's treated like that. He'll take care of everything. It's amazing how much his son has grown. They come to the restaurant. Kyle's mother asks what kind of Banto coin it is and why it's so expensive. Kyle suggests treating it as an in-game item. You no longer have to worry about university tuition fees. Now you can take care of yourself. Kyle's mother says she has already put aside enough money for his education, so she needs to focus on him, and that money should be saved and invested for the future. Kyle will think about it later, but first he suggests moving. He thinks his mother's cough is due to the apartment they live in. She asks us to stop worrying about it. Kyle says it's his money and he'll spend it on something worthwhile. He is stubborn, just like his father. Then Kyle gets a call from Marco. He has urgent business. Kyle says he is having dinner with his mother. Sister Marco returned to Korea. Friends arrive at the hotel where she is staying. Marco's car is painted with images of anime characters. Kyle is feeling uncomfortable. He said to leave him outside. He asks Marco not to drag him into his world. They were 3 minutes late. Marco's sister Vanessa hasn't seen Kyle for a long time. She asks him if he has completed his military service and resumed his studies. Vanessa invites him to work with her at Golden Gate after college. But Kyle doubts the global investment bank will hire him. He thinks Vanessa is worried about something. He learned that Mountain Hill had filed for bankruptcy. Luckily, Marco managed to sell everything before that. After that, he invested part of this money into the account of the OTK company, approximately $250,000. Vanessa gives Marco the contact information for the manager of the Golden Gate branch in the Gangnam area. If you need to transfer a large amount of money to an internal account, ask him to contact you. Just say that he is Vanessa's younger brother. Marco said he would sell gradually. She wonders why he suddenly sold everything at once. Marco says he felt the need for an urgent decision. Kyle asks if Vanessa has come to pick up her brother. She replies that she has come to audit the company that is buying them, so she will be here for about 10 days. Marco is surprised by this. Vanessa asks him if maybe there is something he doesn't like. He says he is very happy and asks Vanessa where she decided to spend the night, to which she replies, "Up here. The entire audit team lives here, with accommodation paid for by the company. That's at least 500,000 won a night. A global investment bank is clearly on a whole other level." Vanessa needs to answer the phone. Marco thinks Vanessa is a little angry. Kyle says it's his fault. Marco wonders what he did. Vanessa returns and thanks them for waiting. It's crowded here now because of the upcoming OPEC meeting. Marco thinks it's some kind of international organization. Maybe he doesn't know anything, but at least he understands that O is an organization. This is a group of oil-producing countries, or more precisely, oil-exporting countries. The results of the OPEC meeting will be announced the day after tomorrow. Here, Kyle sees the eagle again. Fly over it. Kyle sees something written again. This time, OPEC announces production cuts. Vanessa asks Kyle if he's okay. Kyle says he's lost in his thoughts, and Vanessa thinks he's tired because of Marco. Question: what will be discussed at the OPEC meeting? Vanessa says they are currently in Kuwait for a meeting about cutting oil production. While financial assets are represented by stocks and bonds, real assets are oil and gold. Among the world's top 3 oil-producing countries, although the United States is one of the producers, production volumes are still far from meeting domestic demand, and oil-producing countries themselves are among the largest importers. However, thanks to the development of shale gas and oil production, the United States has strengthened its position as a supplier. This could even be called a shale revolution. However, the biggest drawback of shale oil is the high cost of production. Production costs are estimated at approximately $45 per barrel, so if the price of oil falls below $50, it is predicted that more than half of the companies will go bankrupt. For this reason, OPEC countries have hastily held several meetings to discuss production cuts. But the interests of oil-producing countries are too complex to reach a unified agreement, and this has always ended in failure. Vanessa doesn't think they'll be able to reach an agreement. They're struggling to keep the price at $60 a barrel, and if they fail to do that this time, the price will fall below 50. Kyle asks what will happen if they reach an agreement. Oil prices will skyrocket, and the market will be thrilled, but the likelihood of this is extremely low. Kyle thinks that maybe this time they can come to an agreement, and Vanessa asks him why he thinks so. He said it without thinking. It would just be nice if everything went smoothly. That would certainly be good, but hope and prediction are two different things. Kyle leaves the hotel in Marco's car. He suggests that if an OPEC agreement on production cuts is reached, as predicted in his forecast, oil prices will soar. In this case, you can buy oil in advance, which can bring significant profits. Kyle predicted the mortar explosion and the Mountain Hill bankruptcy, so there's a good chance he can predict this OPEC deal too. We're talking about investment capital. Kyle recently signed a lease and still plans to give his mother about 100 million won, so he currently has 275 million won in his account. while Marco has 70 million. It's not worth investing all of that. Marco realized that Kyle had had a vision again when he talked to his sister. Marco, to his annoyance, is very insightful and asks Kyle to tell him what happened. He saw the forecast related to the OPEC agreement to cut production, and therefore suggests buying oil because prices will rise. Marco asks how he plans to buy oil, whether he will actually store barrels at home, and Kyle offers to explain it when they arrive. According to Vanessa, the price is barely hovering around $60 a barrel. Marco asks if things are really that bad. He heard his sister's explanation, but it doesn't seem that significant. Crude oil isn't just used to fuel cars. It's used in many industries, so rising oil prices have a significant impact on the prices of all other goods. Marco will transfer 500 million won to Kyle, leaving $11,932,000. Kyle's share is approximately $673,000. Marco looks up WTI, a brand of oil produced in Texas, and asks where he can buy it. Kyle replies that it's traded on the New York Mercantile Exchange. Since they don't know how it will all end, it's best to invest about $300,000 for now. Marco asks permission to buy a little for himself. Kyle asks him how much he wants, and Marco replies, $10 million. It's a gigantic sum of money, and Marco doesn't seem to have any idea how to handle large amounts of money. There are no guarantees, but Kyle saw it coming and is not inclined to trust it completely. Then Marco says, $3 million. The market is predicting a collapse of the production cut agreement. This expectation has already impacted the price, and oil prices have fallen as low as they could. Even if an agreement isn't reached, the drop won't be that significant. If Kyle is wrong, he'll simply sell the oil at a small loss. Together with Marco, they have a total of about $3.5 million. This didn't particularly interest Kyle, and the information was far from the truth. With just a few finger movements, we can begin to perform the inverted movement. Kyle buys oil. Now we have to wait for the OPEC meeting to end. Kyle and his mother were quite successful in signing a contract for a 2-room apartment with a down payment of about 120 million won. Even though the building was old, the wallpaper and flooring had been updated, so the inside was clean. Kyle asks his mother if she likes the house. She likes it. There are 2 rooms and a lot of light. If Kyle had spent more money, they could have found a better place. But he's glad his mother likes it here. Before that, with each move, the house became smaller and smaller, and my father's things were constantly lost. The items in the box are memorabilia of her father that her mother couldn't throw away. She had previously dreamed of owning her own home for her family. Her father bought a plot of land and made this dream come true by building a large mansion where Kyle was born and grew up for quite a long time. Most of the family's memories are tied to this place. Kyle asks his mother if she often thinks about his father. She answers in the affirmative. He worked so hard for them and left so early that, if he had lived, he could have lived to see such significant days as today. The mother starts to cry. She says she still has some cleaning to do and asks Kyle to go to her room and unpack. Kyle thinks that the first things they need to buy are a washing machine, a refrigerator, a dining table, a bed. They will have to buy everything new. He asks his mother to take a break from work for a while. She says she is healthy and cannot sit at home. Then he should take at least 3 months leave, the mother agrees. Kyle deposited 100 million won into this account. Let him use it as he saw fit. His mother thinks that since he suddenly became rich, he is now giving money away to everyone. Kyle replies that, after all, she is his mother. She saved money, she doesn't need it. Let Kyle save this money to buy a house and for the wedding. Kyle suggests that I just leave them with her. Even after he gave his mother 100 million and deducted the rent, he still had 275 million won left in his account, about 100 million of which would go to taxes, but Marco still owed him 740 million won. This will allow you to stop worrying about money for at least the next 20 years. It's unlikely that making money will always be this easy. Sometime later, Kyle returns home with Marco. Kyle's mother asks his friend if he's eaten, and he replies that he hasn't eaten yet. On moving day, you absolutely must eat jjajangmyeon. Marco suggests ordering it later, and he'll treat you. Marco finds it hard to believe that a rich man would receive toilet paper as a housewarming gift, and asks him what he should have brought. Kyle names something modest, like a refrigerator, a washing machine, or a television. And Marco says that Kyle is putting pressure on him. Marco read in the news that Mountain Hill had gone bankrupt. It was the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, and the estimated losses from the hack were at least hundreds of billions, possibly even close to $1 trillion. Mountain Hill was supposed to pay damages, but the losses were too great for one stock exchange, and it eventually declared bankruptcy. Kyle asks what's wrong with the Banth coin owners, and Marco replies that they're all bankrupt. If something like this had happened at a bank, the government would have stepped in and taken steps to pay compensation. But since Bancoin had no governing body, there was no structure in place to take action or seek compensation for the damages. It's surprising that Kyle predicted Mountain Hill's bankruptcy, but perhaps it was just luck, albeit a very profitable one. Marco believes this is not a coincidence. It is a hidden superpower that awakens in moments of mortal danger. This is how superheroes are born. It must be the eye of the oracle. Sounds good. That's what Marco will call it from now on. If OPEC's prediction comes true, Kyle might believe it, but that has only happened twice so far. If he's wrong this time, it will just be luck, as the army doctor used to say. Marco asks if he can call Kyle a soothsayer if he predicts the outcome of the OPEC meeting. Kyle replies that he can do whatever he wants. The results of the OPEC meeting were due to be announced the following day, but Marco's sister said they would only be known tomorrow. It looks like something has gone wrong, and Kyle has a bad feeling about this. The price has fallen 30% since the purchase, representing a loss of 100 million won, and continues to fall. Kyle believes his conclusions were wrong, but Marco believes in the oracle's eye. He suggests playing a game, and Kyle asks what it is. It's a dating simulator. Kyle reflects that 1.5 billion won a day is still not enough to live comfortably for the rest of his life. He will spend the money recklessly and quickly exhaust it. Some lottery winners have become homeless within 10 years. Marco yells that Kyle is losing interest in the girl. If Kyle wants to avoid running out of money, he needs to be on his guard. But now that he has so much money, he's starting to think he doesn't need to take on a part-time tutoring job. Suddenly, Marco announces that the results of the OPEC meeting have been announced. A decision was made to reduce production. The price of WTI crude oil is $73, up more than 20% in just a few minutes. Kyle tells Marco to check his account. He only predicted a reduction in production and does not know what will happen next. Everything must be sold. Marco sold it. Kyle asks how much they made. $630,000, which is about 700 million won. Kyle's share is 60 million. Marco offers to transfer 800 at once. He owes him 740 million. Kyle says he should have invested $10 million. Marco points out that everyone says that after a win. This is the third time. Whether it's a Shell explosion, a Mountain Hill bankruptcy, or a production cut agreement, this is the third time the forecast has been made. His prediction turned out to be correct. When people think of superpowers, they usually think of flight, destroying buildings with their fists, or telekinesis. But precognition can seem like something much more important in comparison. But if you think about it, you can fly a plane and destroy buildings with an excavator. These superpowers can be replaced by machines. However, the ability to foresee the future is irreplaceable. Predicting the future remains impossible even with the development of computers and artificial intelligence. It's possible that Kyle can predict everything. Elections, sporting events, natural disasters, and so on. This will be an incredible skill. Kyle wonders when this all started. Marco said it was a latent superpower that activated in a critical situation. In other words, an awakening. Kyle doesn't understand why it's only started now. If he could have foreseen this earlier, he would have spent his entire vacation in a casino. Even if it wasn't a casino, there are plenty of ways to make money. After that day, nothing appeared for a long time, so he thought it was just a coincidence and forgot about it. Kyle found this out when he talked to Marco about the banking system and to Vanessa about OPEC. It could be a precognitive ability related to finance, Kyle asks. What about a mortar shell explosion? This should be an exception, as the situation could potentially be fatal. Marco asks what happened after the explosion. It must have been quite a noisy event. The incident is likely related to corruption in military procurement. The KM-18 that exploded was defective to begin with. Not only did supplier Huan Precision Chemicals go bankrupt, but so did shares of defense contractors, which is also related to finances. Marco is right, but if you look at it from this point of view, most things in the world are directly or indirectly related to finance. Marco says he has a great idea, usually when he says that it's complete nonsense. But I let him say it anyway, even though Kyle has a bad feeling about it. Marco has capital, Kyle has a superpower, then they invest and split the profits equally. The offer is good, but they could lose. Kyle asks if he'll be responsible for half the losses. Marco says he can pay it back if he has it. If not, fine. All losses will be covered by the wedding savings. I wonder if such a contract can be drawn up. It's essentially a game of chance. If it were possible, Kyle would gladly do it. But in reality, there's a big problem. Even with a superpower, you can't guarantee that you'll see everything with 100% accuracy. You can only see one of the most likely options. Information must have a reliable source and justification. Otherwise, it simply makes no sense. Even if all swans were once white, that doesn't mean black swans don't exist. That's the trap of inductive reasoning. If Kyle's prediction turns out to be wrong and they lose billions, it's unclear whether they can handle the situation, says Marco. If the superpower is guaranteed to work, however, it's a gigantic opportunity. He has the gift of foresight, and Marco has 13 billion won. If they combine these two factors, they can make a fortune. Marco offers to take his hand, and together they will dive into the world of investments. If Kyle didn't take her hand, they would never see each other again. Marco insists that he agrees. Then Kyle's phone rang. This is one of his friends, Brandon. He and Logan are meeting in Hongdae for drinks. Logan heard Kyle was released from the hospital and wants to see him. Kyle thinks it's time to go. They haven't seen each other in a while. Brandon says they'll meet at Kuma Beer in an hour. Upon returning, he talks to Marco, who asks him not to leave, saying that they have not discussed everything yet. Kyle comes to the restaurant. They ask him how things are going at work. Kyle replies that if possible, it is better not to go. It is awarded to first-year students who arrived this year. This is Jane and Lauren. Logan said he would be a little late, and Brandon offered to start work without it. He asks Kyle if he'll resume his studies next year. Kyle replies that he'll think about it, and remarks to himself that he's already sorted out housing and tuition, so it's best to finish his studies as soon as possible. Lauren offers Kyle a drink and asks if he can pour her a drink later. Kyle says yes. He notices that she drinks a lot. Lauren says she's still waiting for 3 bottles of soju when Logan arrives. They haven't seen each other for a long time. Logan must have been looking for a job all this time. He's luckier than others who haven't been hired yet, because the financial sector is cutting back on hiring. The commercial bank is coping for now, but the investment bank will cut staff even further next year. The current climate is tense due to reorganizations and layoffs. KYB and Door Securities are about to merge, becoming the largest in the industry, having become the first after the merger of the second and fourth largest companies. This is great for investment banking, but not for employees. Mergers always come with layoffs. But Logan, as a new hire, probably has nothing to worry about. Logan says even new hires are being asked to quit, so he's nervous, and the work hasn't been as interesting as he expected. He's considering working in private equity and has always been interested in mergers and acquisitions. It seems that having a job doesn't mean you can relax. There are outstanding businessmen, but no outstanding investors. This is the reality of your country. They need someone who can compete with foreign capital, who, having made a profit, may even become a target for attacks in the media. Who knows if that day will ever come? Maybe some genius investor will appear, like a Korean Warren Buffett. Meanwhile, Lauren receives a call from a man who says he is at the Kuma Beer Brewery. This is Daphne Black. They were supposed to meet today, but Lauren was delayed, so she's coming here. Lauren is asked why she invited Daphne. She is confused. This was the first time Kyle and Daphne met after their breakup. They are going to a cafe. 2 years have passed. Kyle asks her if she is dating Preston, and Daphne says yes. Preston spent some time at the school festival. He is the third son of the owner of a large corporation, GH Constructions, handsome, with a good character. Kyle has only seen him briefly. Shortly after Kyle left for the army, Brandon told him that Daphne was dating Preston. Kyle notices that she has changed a lot. She used to be much more modest. Daphne apologizes for breaking up with Kyle during a difficult time for him. She liked him very much. It may sound strange, but it's true. From the moment she first saw Kyle, he was different from everyone else. She always felt confident in him, and that's why she liked him. Kyle asks why they broke up then. Daphne replies that she just wanted to take advantage of the opportunity. She has nothing to say in her defense. After all, she was the one who broke up, but she just wanted to pursue her dream. Kyle asks what kind of dream it is. Daphne says she'll probably go, and Kyle asks her again what dream she's talking about. This is a dream of success. 2 years ago, before Kyle could even hold his father's funeral, they lost their home. Their family members distanced themselves from them, and then they received a text from Daphne about their breakup. Kyle felt like everything was falling apart. With no time to grieve, he enlisted in the army, and his mother, left alone, was forced to work very hard to make ends meet. Then, thanks to Marco, Kyle earned 1.5 billion won, and thanks to a successful investment, another 60 million, bringing his total to almost 1.5 billion. I wonder what success means to Daphne. Maybe 1.5 billion isn't enough. Suddenly, Kyle sees the eagle again. Maybe he drinks too. I wonder what he will show this time. The eagle soars. He flies as if he has nothing to show. Kyle comes to Marco and wakes him up, after which Marco tells him to go home if he is drunk. Kyle says he shook his hand so they could do it together. Marco doesn't understand what he means. They will succeed together. In the morning, Kyle wonders why he is sleeping at Marco's house. He orders a hangover burger, and Kyle says they need to discuss what hangover soup is good for. Marco asks if anything happened last night. Kyle remembers the eagle. He says he doesn't remember anything. He remembers yesterday's vote, of course. But it's better to talk about it after dinner. Kyle asks Marco if he's invested before, and he says of course not, except for oil, but Bancoin counts too. Kyle was a member of the Practical Investment Club, and even invested some of his own money into it. But at best, it would be $1,000,000, and even then, half of that amount would be loss. I was studying business, so I should have learned something. But Kyle was only there for a year, and he learned something from the club too. He asks how much money Marco has in his account now, and he replies that it's $1.5 million, or 13 billion won. Ordinary people will never see such a sum in their lives. It's interesting what you can do with such money. In investing, capital size is crucial. To make 100 million plus 10, you need to achieve 100% return. But if you have 10 billion, 1% is enough. That's why Marco was able to earn 700 million won so easily. But if he had failed, the losses would have been enormous as well. Marco asks where they should start, but it's unclear why he would invest 13 billion won when he could live on the interest for the rest of his life. The more money, the better. Plus, it's fun, like a game, Kyle says. Making money is only fun until you start losing it. Marco asks Kyle what he'd like to do if he could earn more money. Kyle isn't sure. Investing requires foresight. You have to wait for the eagle or the smoke, but it is unclear when and how this will happen. He himself is not sure, but it was like a reflex when he was faced with certain information. If Kyle really has the ability to foresee financial matters, he needs information. Over the past few days, I have been reading all the latest economic articles and studying the stocks of large companies listed on the stock exchange. In investing, information is as important as capital. Stock prices, oil prices, gold prices, exchange rates, bond yields, all fluctuate based on information. Today, thanks to mandatory disclosure policies, institutions and companies are required to publish all relevant data. This allows Kyle to learn both good and bad news about companies. But publicly available information that can be seen by virtually anyone has little value. The shares of companies that received good news have already risen, and the shares of companies that received bad news have already fallen. Absolutely nothing interesting. He needs inside information, for example, about the Mountain Hill Company or about OPEC. Marco says that even with foresight, things don't happen instantly, and Kyle somehow feels left out. Marco suggests drawing up a contract in which the profits will be divided equally. Vanessa always said that the closer people were to each other, the clearer things should be. And that was true. If Kyle had believed that Marco had not kept his promises, he would not have trusted him with that 500 million. Kyle wants coffee, but Marco says there is no coffee at home. Then Kyle gets a call from an unknown number. This is Lauren. She asks if Kyle would like to have coffee if he has time. He arrives at the cafe where Lauren is already waiting for him. She thanks him for coming despite the unexpected request. Kyle says he was just visiting a close friend. Lauren asks him why he's looking at her like that. He thought she looked like a girl group member he saw in the army. Kyle asks her what she is doing in Gangnam. Lauren replies that she lives in Cheongdam, and that luckily Kyle's friend lives nearby. He was about to drink coffee and thought to himself, "It's incredible that a freshman lives in Cheongdam. It's one of the most prestigious areas. Maybe she comes from a rich family?" Kyle asks her why he wanted to meet her, and Lauren replies that she wanted to apologize. She rarely attended such meetings, and was unaware of any relationship between Kyle and Daphne. Lauren was worried when he left like that. If he returned to college next semester, they would be in class together. She asks Kyle if he can do her a favor. He believes that the apology was just an excuse to ask him out on a date. Kyle considers whether he should turn her down if she confesses, but she is too beautiful. Lauren asks for help choosing a phone. If she goes alone, she might get scammed. Kyle suggests they go right away. He doesn't know much about electronics either. Lauren says his presence will be enough. Marco knows his stuff. He never skimps on his personal devices, and probably knows everything about the latest models, their features and prices. They come to an electronics store. Lauren is interested in the L6 model from Seo-Sung Electronics. The store clerk says it's a bestseller. Lauren asks if the refund amount has increased today to match the one listed on the website, and the seller says yes. Buying a phone these days has become incredibly complicated. If you don't know what you're doing, You're bound to get ripped off. But it looks like Lauren figured it all out herself. Kyle decides to take a look at the L6 model. Before his military service, he used the letter L3 for a long time. Suddenly, he sees a familiar glow in the reflection of the phone screen. The eagle appeared again. Kyle sees the inscription L6, limited edition. He doesn't understand what it means. Lauren sees him looking somewhere. Kyle says he just saw a mosquito. She wonders what kind of mosquitoes there are in this weather. So it seemed. Lauren bought a blue phone because pink was out, but that color is also nice. Kyle says this model might be discontinued soon. Lauren asks why, but Kyle was thinking about the prediction. He says it's just a joke and says goodbye. Lauren was going to invite him to lunch as a thank you. Kyle tells Marco about the Samsung Electronics Model L6 phone. It turns out Marco has a phone like that too. Kyle asks why it's pink. Marco thinks a lot of boys like that color, but that's unlikely. Kyle says he was playing L6 and saw a prophecy about the game being discontinued. He doesn't know why. Samsung Electronics produces a wide range of smartphones, from affordable to high-end, with the L series being Samsung's flagship product. But now the premium smartphone market is dominated by Enpli and its N-phone model, and it is no exaggeration to say that Samsung's L series is dividing this market. Enpli significantly outperforms its competitors in terms of sales and profits among high-end phones. The L6 was designed to compete with them. Some even claim it surpasses the N phone in design and performance. Thanks to these accolades, the L6 is selling like hotcakes. The previous model, the L5, sold an astonishing 50 million units worldwide, and now the L6 is projected to sell over 70 million units. It's probably still selling well worldwide, so why discontinue it? It might be a patent dispute. It said that there are over 200,000 patents per smartphone. Samsung is one of the world's largest electronics manufacturers, and as such, it is embroiled in numerous patent disputes in various countries. At the dawn of the smartphone market, the patent dispute between Samsung and Enpli became in some ways the case of the century. Even if they lose a patent case, they typically only pay damages and the cost of the patent, which rarely results in sales being stopped. Samsung leads in the number of patents. Unlike Enpli, which pioneered the smartphone era, or other companies that started their activities later, Samsung has been producing smartphones since the 2G era, and, as a result, has accumulated a huge number of patents in the field of communications and technology. Even when they found themselves embroiled in a dispute with Enpli over design patents, they counterattacked using communications patents as weapons, and had some success. It turns out the main question is why production will stop and when it will happen. As far as Marco knows, there are no problems with Samsung products that could cause this. Even if a problem occurs with a smartphone, it can be repaired or refunded. There's no point in discontinuing it. Indeed, the smartphone has many features, and there are many problems with its software and hardware. If every problem led to the cessation of sales, all manufacturers would have gone bankrupt long ago. From the company's perspective, they would never intentionally do something that was unprofitable. It's unclear why a product that was selling well suddenly stopped selling. In the middle of the night, Marco's scream is suddenly heard. Something was near his head and suddenly it exploded. Marco was charging his phone while playing a game, and it suddenly exploded while he was sleeping. It's unclear how a phone could explode a week after purchase. Marco thinks it's some kind of bomb. Kyle would have warned Lauren not to buy this phone if he'd known this would happen. Marco discovered online that there had already been an explosion that occurred 3 days after launch, and the community even posted a photo showing that the explosion occurred during loading. Thanks to Samsung Electronics' swift response, the situation quickly died down. Other similar blog posts and Facebook posts followed, and there were likely even more cases, given those that went unreported. From the manufacturer's perspective, they didn't want to provoke a quality dispute. It's no surprise they tried to silence people by offering monetary compensation. Samsung said this was due to external influence. In fact, phone explosions are not that uncommon. The problem is one of proportion. It's different things. One device in a million or one in 100,000. Besides the explosions, there were some minor issues, but these didn't significantly impact sales. Until the N-Phone 7 comes out, the L6 is likely to dominate the market. Kyle asks if there were any problems during the production process, and Marco replies that it's unlikely that Samsung made a mistake that even a small company wouldn't make. Either way, it's possible. They have incredibly valuable information, but Samsung Electronics doesn't seem to be taking any action until they confirm the cause of what happened. Selling Banthcoin wasn't an investment. They were simply taking a risk. Even if Mountain Hill hadn't gone bankrupt, they wouldn't have lost anything. But in this case, it's different. If it had been a small investment, they wouldn't have thought about it so much. If closure is inevitable, they need to determine the timing and consequences in order to decide how to invest. We need to monitor the situation for a few more days. The next day, So-sun's representatives stated that they would announce the cause after the investigation was completed. An important condition for receiving compensation was that they should not publish information about the explosion online until the investigation results were released. Apparently, there were many such incidents. A company employee wasn't even surprised to see the state of the L6 building. Apparently, there were more explosions than were reported online. If it were just a device malfunction, they wouldn't have discontinued it. But an explosion is a completely different matter. Phones are especially sensitive from a security standpoint because they are always on a person. If Marco had been talking on the phone at the time of the explosion, he could have been seriously injured. In this scenario, this could well become a reason to cancel the sales. Samsung Electronics' annual operating profit exceeds 30 trillion won, split between semiconductors, displays, home appliances, and other products, with 40% of that profit coming from its IT Mobile Communications division, which includes smartphones. Kyle estimates that if L6 production is discontinued, they will lose 40% of their operating profit. Marco believes it's unlikely to be that bad. They have mid- and low-end product lines, as well as older models, but it will definitely hurt Samsung. If each phone costs 1 million won, the compensation amount will be 6 trillion won, and the losses will increase several times, taking into account the expected profit and the decline in brand value. The question is how to invest. If good news is predicted, they will simply buy shares. But when bad news is predicted, there are not many options. Apparently, this occurs through short selling. That is, the sale of exchange-traded assets not included in the investor's investment portfolio. Since OTK is a foreign company, this shouldn't cause any problems. Short selling itself is straightforward. Regular stock trading involves buying and then selling. Short selling involves borrowing shares from a broker, selling them, buying them back at a lower price, and returning them, all with the goal of making a profit. It's a matter of profitability. Even if you sell 100 million won's worth of shares and buy them back for 10 million, the profit margin will be limited to 99%, but no stock will fall that much. Even if L6 is discontinued, the fall will be 20 or 30% at most. Investing 13 million won to earn 3 or 4 billion, even if it brings in a gigantic profit, is pointless. Kyle asks if there is a way to get more. Marco offers futures and options. Kyle doesn't understand derivatives very well, and with their small budget at the investment club, they couldn't even consider them. They already have $12.5 million, which is enough to take the matter seriously. They need someone who understands derivatives, but Vanessa doesn't. If she asks what they base their decisions on when it comes to futures and options, they won't have a clear answer. Marco suggests telling her that Kyle trusts her foresight, but in situations like this, Vanessa's anger cannot be underestimated. Kyle meets Noah Fleming, the former president of the investment club. Some consider him crazy, others a genius. There are two types of geniuses in the world: those who excel in several fields and those who excel in only one. Noah Fleming belongs to the latter group. She grew up in Australia, so she had no problems with English, but her overall grades were below average. The reason he was accepted into a Korean university as a student with special abilities was because he was a mathematical prodigy. He attended fourth-year classes from his first year, became fascinated by a problem given to him by his teacher, and solved it in 3 days and 3 nights, without eating or sleeping. Then, quite by chance, he joined an investment club and became interested in the stock market, immersing himself in it completely. While playing an investment simulator, a small company called QMK Tech caught his eye. Being a mathematical genius, Noah predicted a 10-fold increase in its stock price, and, deciding he couldn't pass up such an opportunity, took 5 million won from his deposit to pay rent. Just 2 weeks after moving from a friend's house to the club room, QMK shares began to repeatedly hit their highs, as it was linked to the then popular topic of the Internet of Things, IoT. The concept of a data network between objects equipped with integrated tools and technologies for interacting with each other or with the external environment. In about 2 months, the stock price, which had remained stable for years, increased 10-fold, and in just 1 month of investment, 5 million won turned into 50 million. After the success of his first investment, Noah left everything and devoted himself full-time to analyzing companies. Although he occasionally suffered losses, by the time Kyle joined the club, Noah's investment fund had grown to 300 million won, a gargantuan sum that ordinary students would never see. An ordinary man would have been pleased, but Noah felt that this was not enough, and what he regretted most was the size of his initial capital. If your initial investment is 100 million won, you can make a profit of 6 billion won. To achieve higher profits, Noah began studying and analyzing the options market, and as he gained confidence, a company called CL Chemicals caught his attention. He concluded that the company was significantly undervalued. He predicted the current rise in the stock price, sold all his shares for cash, and began buying call options on CL Chemicals shares. But just days later, an absurd disaster occurred when an employee fell victim to an email phishing attack and transferred a payment to the wrong account. As a result, CL Chemicals lost 20% of its operating profit for the quarter, or $27 million. This unexpected bad news caused the stock price to plummet, and the value of the call options Noah had bought to collapse instantly. Instead of liquidating his position, he decided to take a risk and borrow money from a loan shark at the maximum legal interest rate to buy even more call options. On the day the option expired, the stock price failed to recover, and more than 300 million won that had been invested were lost. When Noah was unable to repay the debt, he resorted to illegal collection methods and went underground. Later, CL Chemicals' stock price skyrocketed, but that's another story. Had Noah bought the actual shares, his 300 million won investment would have turned into 700 million. But due to his obsession with options, he never made a penny. Soon Kyle meets Noah. He asks if he's sure he doesn't mind paying the bill. Kyle introduces Noah to Marco, and Noah remembers buying Banthcoin back in high school. Kyle asks what Noah has been up to since he took a break. For a while, he took any job he could find. He worked in construction, as a driver, and now he teaches mathematics to applicants, preparing them for exams. When you work hard to earn money, you realize how valuable even a $100 coin is. Noah is nearly 2 million in debt. All he needs to do is work a little harder, and he'll pay it all off. Noah went from being a millionaire to being mired in debt overnight. Many in his position would likely have given up and fallen into despair. The moment Kyle met Noah, he immediately sensed he was someone special. Kyle wanted to know more about futures and options. Noah asked him if he had already gone through the account opening process, to which Kyle replied that everything would be done through OTK. Both futures and options are derivative financial instruments. Kyle has a rough idea of the difference. Futures contracts are agreements in which two parties agree to trade a specified quantity of a commodity at a future date. This is done to maintain a fixed price without fluctuations to prevent a decline in value. It is a promise to trade at a predetermined price. Whether you win or lose depends on the contract price on the day the trade is entered into. Both parties are obligated to complete the trade regardless of profit or loss. When you trade options, you sell the right to make a trade. Options also have an expiration date. Each option has a seller and a buyer, and the right to exercise the option belongs to the buyer. Marco believes this puts the option seller at a disadvantage. At first glance, it may seem that way, but in the market, the profit margin for sellers is higher, the risks are unlimited, and that is why they act with caution. So, from a buyer's perspective, you win whether the stock price goes up or down. Let's assume there's a put option with a low probability of success. The stock price is 200 million won, and the put option is selling for 100 million. For the buyer to make a profit, the stock price must fall by half. On the expiration date, the stock price is 10 million won, meaning a profit of 900,000 won in 1 week. If the buyer had chosen the billion-dollar option, the payout would have been 9 trillion. Of course, in reality, this almost never happens. Something good is expected, but the result is usually bad. In such cases, the price of put options skyrockets hundreds of times, and the option seller must pay this amount. It seems like all the theory Kyle's been studying is starting to take shape. Noah advises against playing options. He asks what exactly Kyle is trying to do. Seosung Electronics is a company, but the L6 model just came out and is selling well, Kyle says, and it will be discontinued. If the explosions continue, they will have to do it. You have to be careful. You can play with the settings and lose everything, as happened to Noah. Marco heard it. You can lose everything at once. But he still wants to do it. Kyle is willing to try. Based on the information they have, they are considering investment strategies assuming L6 will be discontinued. There are two options, either low risk and low return, or high risk and high return. Kyle suggests investing 70% in put options and the rest in short sales, even if yields decline, to avoid a worst-case scenario. So Sun's current share price reflects the future profits associated with the L6. It's safe to say the price will fall by about 10%, as much as it rose after the L6's launch. There was another explosion in the United States, and it didn't even happen during loading. Samsung Electronics made its position on the matter public in the news, and international media began to take interest as the explosion occurred in the United States. Daily options trading volume in Korea is 500 billion won, while futures trading volume is 1 trillion won. Kyle trades options through HTS, a program that allows retail investors to trade outside of a brokerage firm. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish the stock market from the casino. Of the 13 billion won, 800 million is for Kyle, although Marco said he would cover the investment himself. Since they decided to invest together, Kyle will also contribute his 800 million. If the stock doesn't fall as predicted, all of these options will become worthless. As the contract is executed, money flows from the cash balance to the options balance, and now there are only 800 million left in the account. Even in the worst case, this should be enough to last for a while. All that remains is to wait. Contrary to expectations, the share price of Samsung rose by 8% in 2 days. Short selling, which only makes money when the stock falls, naturally resulted in an 8% loss. The problem was the put options. Because the stock price is rising rather than falling, the chances of the put options being exercised are extremely low. In other words, they have become worthless pieces of paper. Marco says nothing, but he clearly looks worried. Rumor has it that Samsung decided to replace the batteries, and 10 more explosions occurred, although the stock price rose. From the outside, it appears that they are ignoring the situation, which will undoubtedly only make it worse. Even if everything goes according to plan, they have to announce the end of production tomorrow. Samsung Electronics is one of the world's leading electronics manufacturers, so the press conference hall was filled not only with local media representatives, but also with foreign journalists. Samsung Electronics, president of international management, expresses his sincere gratitude to the customers who always support and love their products. Ultimately, the explosions were attributed to a Samsung SB battery. The company promised adequate compensation to affected customers and announced a replacement battery with the long-awaited BTL battery and the resumption of product production. A complete recall of 6 million devices was also announced. This is a withdrawal of funds from the market, not a cessation of sales. People like Samsung's decision to recall and replace 6 million units of products, which represents a loss of 6 trillion won. But in terms of production costs, the loss is only 2 trillion. It is also expected that to reduce losses, returned phones will be polished, have their batteries replaced, and be resold as new. Following the announcement of the recall, the shares, which had previously been falling, rose again and closed down just 1.5%. At the same time, a shareholder return policy was announced, including quarterly dividends. This demonstrates masterful crisis management at a major corporation. Samsung's strategic timing accelerated the stock price recovery. The losses had already reached 6 billion won, which was half of the initial investment. Kyle hadn't expected things to turn out like this. Although they agreed to split the profits, Marco will have to cover most of the losses, as Kyle cannot cover losses of tens of billions. 60 billion won is enough money to last a lifetime. Kyle might not even have spent it all if he spent 1 billion won a year. To recover 50% of the capital lost, you need to make a profit of 100%. The big problem is that this is not the end. If Kyle doesn't return the capital and increase it, then after the option expires, even the remaining billions will disappear. He doesn't know what to do now. Kyle and Marco get out of their beds. Kyle thinks Marco wasn't sleeping either, but says he woke up because Kyle was moaning in his sleep. It is possible that Samsung's stock price will not rise further. Most people are concerned about both the rise and fall of stock prices. The only thing that is certain is that L6 shares will be discontinued. Kyle believes that Marco blames him because none of this would have happened if it weren't for the prophecy. But Marco was the first to offer to invest. This is not the end of the story. Removing devices may not solve the problem. Although Samsung stated that the problem was with the battery, the cause could be something else. It's not that they're completely wrong. The problem is timing, with very little time left before the option expires. A week after Samsung's announcement, the farewell to life has finally begun. 30,000 new service points were opened in one day. Everyone was happy. Both those whose old customers had been replaced and the new ones. After successfully resolving the uncertainties, Samsung Electronics' share price began to rise again. Meanwhile, the losses had grown to more than 9 billion won, and out of 13 billion, only 3.5 billion remained. Luckily, they made some short sales. If they had only invested in put options, they would have had almost nothing left. Marco can't believe that the money he earned with Bandcoin has simply disappeared. The put options they bought are now worthless, although they still have 3.5 billion left, which is no consolation. Kyle himself has lost 600 million. Next week, barring any unforeseen circumstances, it will all really be over. A miscalculation led to this disaster. It looks like the same thing will happen to him as to Noah. Either their prediction was wrong, or something was missed. Marco says that he used to live well without this money. Kyle has a dream. The fire extinguisher on the plane is turned on. One person was injured. There is an exploded phone and an airline ticket lying on the floor. Date: December 9th. Kyle wakes up. He realizes that there are 4 days left. In 4 days, an event will occur that will cause the production of the L6 model to cease. If this was one of the visions, then so it will be. Someone writes that even after replacing L6 with a new one, the difference is completely unnoticeable. The phone we exchanged exploded 2 hours ago. After I put the case on and connected the device to the charger, it lit up. So Song has already commissioned a certified independent agency to investigate the matter, and they again claim that it was due to outside influence. If they were so sure, they wouldn't do anything like that. Marco suddenly remembers a quote from the cartoon about Yogi Bear. Kyle only knows Yogi Berra, and Marco has only made one mistake. This quote probably means, "It's over until it's over." So Sung claimed that the fire was caused by the SB battery, and he replaced it with a BLT. But the explosion happened again. This may be done intentionally to get compensation, or perhaps the problem lies with the device itself. You will see how events unfold over the next 4 days. 4 days later, it emerged that after the in-flight explosion was confirmed, the phone had been identified as Samsung's latest model. The passenger, who had the phone in his pocket, suffered burns to his thigh and fingers, and the plane made an emergency landing 30 minutes after takeoff. The injured passenger had exchanged his old L6 phone for a new one the day before, and Samsung Electronics has not yet responded to the incident. The news quickly spread through media outlets around the world, prompting American Airlines to announce a grounding of L6 aircraft. Following this news, an emergency meeting was called at Samsung's headquarters. After the opening bell, Samsung's shares began to fall, falling 13% by the start of the lunch session. Experts say now is the time to buy, but if things are going so well, they should do it themselves. While large organizations were selling off their assets en masse, only private investors tried to support these acquisitions, but they decided that this was not the worst-case scenario that could lead to the cessation of production. Vice President So-sung enters the conference room. He believes the battery replacement was the root cause, but it is unclear why the replacement unit exploded. The head of the international department said that an investigation into the causes of the explosion is currently underway. It may take a week, but it will take longer to determine the exact reason. Perhaps they were too hasty in withdrawing the funds. They should have already established the exact cause and taken appropriate measures. The director of the Strategic Development Department says that they will buy time by recalling the products, and during this time they will be able to identify and fix the cause of the defect. Their main task is to buy time. Attempts to correct this now won't convince consumers, so a product recall is the best option. The problem is that this is the second such incident, and it's unclear whether the exact cause can be determined in the meantime. There is another method, but no one even dares to mention it. The president reflects on what decision his father would have made. The company was founded by his grandfather, and his father developed it throughout his life. When his father became ill, management of the company passed to the vice president. As a child, his grandfather told him that a corporation was like the ship of Theseus, but it was only later that the vice president learned of a concept called Theseus's paradox. Theseus returned on a ship, and the Athenians decided to preserve it. When the planks rotted, they took them down and replaced them with new ones. And when the oars rotted, they put new ones in their place. After thousands of years of storage and numerous replacements of original parts, not a single original part remains. And now this ship can no longer be called the ship of Theseus, as it was before. The same applies to the Samsung Corporation, founded during the Korean War. At that time, it manufactured and sold household appliances and purchased technology from Japanese companies. None of the employees who worked there back then are still there. None of the products produced back then are still manufactured today. The head office and factories have moved several times. Everything has changed, but Samsung Electronics is still Samsung Electronics. The vice president wonders what then defines his company. The company announces that it will cease production of the L6 from now on. All sold products will be returned, and consumers who wish to exchange devices will receive appropriate compensation. Stopping production is the worst possible option. Returning every unit sold and refusing to sell that model again would also do nothing to prevent damage to the company's image. No matter how much you lose, you can make money again. But if the company loses trust, it's all over. They've already lost because of a problematic product, and they've lost again by initiating a recall without fixing the problem. This is their last chance. The chairman of the International Directorate will prepare an announcement immediately. Samsung sincerely apologizes to the customers and partners who trusted and loved L6 for the significant inconvenience and concern this incident has caused. While the investigation and detailed review are ongoing, they state that this decision was made with the utmost respect for the safety of their customers. From that moment on, Samsung decided to stop selling and trading L6. Production has been discontinued. After the press conference, even private investors began selling shares. Experts estimate that the expected losses from the L6 shutdown will amount to 50 trillion won, which would be the lowest for Samsung since the 2008 financial crisis. The Korean stock exchange, securities and investment companies, and the foreign exchange market were in crisis. This was Black Tuesday, which would later go down in the history of the Korean stock market. The CEO of KYB Securities estimates that the losses on recently issued put options on Samsung Electronics stock exceed 1,000 times their original value. Even before the incident, the put options on Samsung shares were purchased through Golden Gate, which also suffered significant losses. It turned out that the put options were purchased completely by accident through a company called Golden Gate. Investing isn't child's play. No one would invest billions without a reason. The director demands information on internal transactions. When Kyle and Marco saw the stocks fall, they were surprised. Since this is not a closed market, anyone can gain or suffer significant losses. In the structure of short selling and options trading, one participant's gain is tied to another's loss, turning a disaster for everyone into a blessing in disguise. The 13 billion invested turned into a profit of over 50 billion, growing to 685 billion won. They went from being billionaires to being billionaires. They completed the deal and made a profit. The final profit was 5,170%, 685 billion. If the price had fallen even lower before the expiration date, it would have been a real jackpot, with the profits exceeding 1 trillion. They agreed to split the profits by subtracting from them the capital of 13 billion, half of which was 332 billion. I wonder if the banknotes would reach the height of a building if they were stacked together. When Kyle came back from the army, he was just a poor man worried about the future, and now it looks like he will have 336 billion. It's hard to believe that he can actually earn such a gigantic amount. His initial capital was only 800 million, and if he lost it, Marco would suffer greatly. Just a few days ago, he alone was suffering losses in the tens of billions, and now he feels a little awkward keeping half of the profits for himself. In any case, without Kyle, Marco would have lost 13 billion. Kyle provides the information. Marco provides the capital, so it's no surprise that Kyle sees his contribution as more significant. But this man said from the very beginning that he would give half without hesitation, and he intended to keep his promise. Kyle once again realized the power of foresight by predicting the collapse of a single smartphone, and has already made hundreds of billions. I wonder what would have happened if I had predicted a financial crisis, a war, or a natural disaster. In case of unforeseen circumstances, it is best to keep it a secret. The only person Kyle trusts more than Marco is his mother. So if she knows about his abilities, now that he understands that sharing such information is dangerous, he will definitely not tell anyone. Now they are really rich. But although this is good news, it is difficult to be happy. They made gigantic profits during the national crisis. Financial markets have barely stabilized, but Samsung Electronics' operating profit is already expected to decline, and weak smartphone exports could worsen the trade balance from next month, while shares of US company Enplay and China's Xiaomi rose. In the end, this was not the reason for the product being removed from sale. Even if they had done nothing, L6 would have been closed. Samsung's stock would have hit rock bottom, and the Kospi and Kospak indices would have plummeted. While everyone else was suffering losses, someone was sure to make a profit. The most important thing is that they are now incredibly rich, all thanks to their foresight. Whether Marco had foresight or not, his investments also played a key role. They could have missed out on such a great opportunity. Even knowing the same information, few would invest more than 10 billion. Marco asks how Kyle will get the money if it's already in his account. The taxes will be astronomical, over 150 billion. You will have to prove your source of income, but you will be able to receive the money in cash. I wonder how many boxes full of banknotes there will be then. It is unclear whether it will be possible to withdraw 336 billion in cash. Kyle had no idea how much trouble he would get into. Maybe he should set up a corporation in an offshore zone? I have no idea what to do with this money, but it's a shame it all ended this way. 13 billion turned into 670. You can earn even more if you reinvest. But as your capital increases, it becomes more difficult to make a lot of money at once. However, if you make a consistent profit, you can accumulate wealth. Modern society adheres to a highly developed capitalist model. Money can change the world and save lives. By making one investment, they earned more than they could spend in their entire life, and yet they could do nothing and still feel great. But it is unfair to be content with this and stop there. The premonition Kyle hadn't yet shared with Marco came when the eagle flew away as if nothing had happened. But it was confirmed, said OTK CEO Kyle Moore. Kyle asks Marco to shake his hand. Then he will go with him to the end. And if he does not shake his hand, then Kyle will go to the end alone. The CEO does not have to be the largest shareholder. Marco doesn't know how far it will go, but together, they will get there. It turns out Kyle will be directing OTK with him. The money is still held in the corporation overseas, so there are no taxes to be paid in Korea. The distribution of company shares is also a gift, and Delaware has a gift tax exemption. Marco asks if Kyle still has the contract he gave him. Marco wants to see it. He is breaking the contract. If you think about it, dividing it in half doesn't make sense. Marco asks, what about an 8-to-1 ratio? Judging by the expression on his face, this is not a joke. In a world where money can even lead to murder, it's not uncommon for a person to change their mind despite hundreds of billions. But Marco is not one of them. He says he'll keep 20% for himself, and Kyle will keep 80%. Kyle asks him if he's crazy. Maybe he ate something bad. Marco replies that he ate a double portion of jjajangmyeon, and of course he's crazy. But Marco just talked about splitting it in half. Thanks to his foresight, Kyle can make as much money as he wants. Until now, Marco provided the capital, and Kyle provided the foresight. But now he has the capital too. Eventually, a situation will arise where he will do all the work himself, and the capital will be divided equally. It will not make sense for him to keep only half of the profits. As Marco said, Kyle can now invest on his own. But he still turned to him because he thought it was the best decision, regardless of friendship or loyalty. Compared to the tens of trillions circulating daily in the financial market, 685 billion is a small sum. It is more profitable to move this money as a whole than to divide it into two parts and move them separately. Marco wants to give up 30% of the shares, but that's over 200 billion. Kyle said he invests where he can make a profit, so Marco wants to invest in him. Even if he were to give up 200 billion now, 20% of OTK's future profits would still belong to him. Kyle asks if he will be able to earn anything in the future, but it doesn't matter because Marco won't be able to spend that money for the rest of his life anyway. He earned so much thanks to Kyle. He's not going to invest once or twice and then be done with it. He's going to go all the way. And if Kyle wants to lead the team, he needs that stake. If he gets 80%, that means he'll run the company. Kyle is studying to be a manager and should be able to handle the job. Kyle's only been studying for a year, and Marco already thinks he has an MBA. Marco asks him why he needs a professional American basketball league, and Kyle replies, the NBA. Anyway, from now on, Kyle is the CEO of OTK. Kyle asks Marco if he's sure he won't regret it. And he is. Kyle is ashamed that he ever doubted his friend for a moment when he first heard about the joint investment idea and dismissed it as nonsense. He is the only one who assesses the current situation with greater objectivity. That's exactly what they will do. By the way, New Year is coming soon. Marco asks how Kyle celebrated the holiday last year. He says it feels like he's constantly shoveling snow. Marco was with his mother. Last year, Kyle was worried that she was feeling lonely and asked Marco to stay with her. He came to her instantly, and at Christmas, he was probably the only one who cared about her. The holidays are approaching. We need to hurry. Kyle asks Marco to transfer 800 million won from the money he sent to Korea to his account. Marco asks if it's possible to transfer both accounts at once. Kyle replies that it's necessary for proper tax filing. They'll also be dealing with the taxes on the 500 million Marco sent him earlier. It's best to resolve any potential issues as soon as possible. Marco is looking for the piece of paper his sister gave him. I found it. He asks Kyle what he plans to do with the money, and he replies that he's thinking of going for a walk, maybe buying some gifts. Kyle arrives at the real estate agency. The employee decides that a student is looking for an apartment. The commission may be small, but now is not the time to make unreasonable demands. She says she has a great option for a new studio apartment with a good owner and at an affordable price. Kyle says he's looking for a house. He's thinking about buying, not renting, and the employee thinks she misheard. Kyle reaffirms his desire to buy a house. The price depends largely on the location, lot size, and quality of construction. Some homes cost around $300 million, while there are luxury homes priced at $1 billion and up. Kyle asks how much they'll charge for it, and the employee replies, about $500 or $600 million. Kyle wants to buy this house. It looks like he's not joking. The commission on the sale will be in the millions. The employee says she will check if there are similar options. But Kyle wants to buy this particular house. The employee says that the product is not for sale. Kyle asks if the owner would be willing to sell the house if he offered above market price. There might be a reason why he wants this particular place. The employee said the market price was around $600 million. Kyle can add another $200. If the deal goes through, Kyle will pay the employee the money as a commission. For many people, owning their own home is a dream. And Joan Foster, a housewife, moved into a 2-story house on the outskirts of the city 2 years ago through the courts. But the joy was short-lived, and over time, the inconveniences began to accumulate. My husband complained about the long commute to work, and the children about the distance to school. The 20-year-old house needed major repairs, but the cost was too high, so only temporary fixes were made. More and more new apartments were appearing in the city, and Joan dreamed of selling her house and moving into one of them. One of her contractor friends told her that the house was worth $600 million, but after renovations, the price could drop to $500 million if it was sold. While Joan was thinking about this, her realtor called and said that a young man was very interested in her house. If she were offered a market price, she would agree to consider it. The agent, believing they didn't know prices in the area, offered $800 million, and they agreed to buy. This is $200 million more than the market price. That would have been enough for the apartment Joan wanted to buy, but there was still no reason why the house should cost more than market value. For that money, she could buy a nicer house closer to the station. Perhaps there's some hidden value there she's unaware of, Joan will think. She was ready to agree, but changed her mind. She was offered $200 million more than the market price. Perhaps if she had waited, she would have been offered even more. When Joan told her husband about this, he began to persuade her to agree immediately. But she was thinking about something else. There must be a reason why they want to buy a house at such a high price. Joan calls the agent and asks him to tell her that she will not sell the property for $800 million, but will settle for $1 billion. However, the agent reports that the man wants to sign a contract with Natalie Wells and also visited her home that same day for $760 million. This woman is stealing from her client. Natalie Wells's house may be a little bigger and nicer, but $760 million is still an absurd price. Joan missed out on a great opportunity. It's a colossal loss compared to its actual market value, but the contract has not yet been signed. She asks him to tell him that she will also sell it for $760 million, that the agent should try to convince them, and she will pay him a good commission. Soon the agent reports that they have accepted the offer. She advises getting a down payment before changing your mind. If you know the market price, you might change your mind. The agent suggests taking 30% as a down payment. After sending all the necessary data, a deposit of $228 million was received. There are 4 days left until New Year's, and the agent asks if Joan can vacate the house before that date. But they haven't found a new home yet and have to move in 4 days. The client is willing to pay Joan $20 million for the move. She asks him to tell her that they are moving the day after tomorrow. Kyle and his mother's house was auctioned off after his father's funeral, and after 2 years of suffering, he finally gets it back. It might have been cheaper if Kyle had waited, but he didn't want to. The agent says that everything will be ready by tomorrow's contract signing. She asks them to explain the reason for choosing this particular house. Perhaps there is something she doesn't know. Even though he heard that nothing like that happened, he talks a lot. It's just a good day today. There are so many couples on the streets now. But Kyle bought a gift, so I'm in a good mood. His mother calls him. He tells her that he will be home soon. Kyle goes somewhere with her. His mother asks why he doesn't eat at home. He replies that today is the day when he definitely needs to dine out. Marco will pick them up. Kyle's mother asks if Marco is cold, and he replies that he is wearing thermal underwear. They are going to a wonderful place. Kyle gets another call from Lauren. She asks him why he doesn't answer her calls. She calls him non-stop. Kyle says he didn't notice. Lauren asks how Kyle knew the L6s would be recalled. He just made a joke and immediately stated that it was a joke. He's going somewhere now, so it's better to talk later. Kyle hopes she doesn't find out about this. Noah Fleming also contacted him, saying he couldn't reach him by phone and asking him to call back as soon as he saw the message. He was likely also shocked by the news of the deal being canceled. They are returning home. Kyle's mother probably remembers everything here. After all, she lived here for over 20 years. It's nice to be here again. It brings back fond memories. They saw everything, so they can come back, Kyle suggests, since they've already been here. The mother says that she can't just enter someone else's house. It looks like the people who lived here have left. She remembers Kyle's childhood. He was an outstanding student, and when he grew up, he passed his exams successfully. Now is the time to leave. You can't just walk into someone else's house, even if there's no one there. Kyle says they only rented out the house for a short time. Now it belongs to them again. The mother asks how this happened. They and Marco earned some money and bought it. After his father's death, to say that Kyle wasn't sad or struggling would be a lie. The mother is very grateful that her son grew up so strong. Kyle asks her why she is crying on such a happy day. Marco starts crying too. Kyle told his mother everything that had happened, except, of course, the part about the eagle. She asks him how much he made, but Kyle can't tell her the total or she'll faint. He's talking about 3 billion won. Maybe he should have said less. She decided to put her studies on hold for now and devote herself to investing, which her mother says is no easy task. Many are trying to take advantage of the situation. His father always said that anyone who claims to have exclusive information is a fraud. Naturally, she gets excited when she hears her son, who is in his early 20s, talk about investing. Kyle says he doesn't borrow money, uses only what he has, and if something goes wrong, he will stop immediately. His mother is sure she's thought it all through. It's good that Marco is with him, she says. He's completely responsible for Kyle. As for the house, a company will be arriving tomorrow morning to estimate the cost of repairs and begin work. He will give his mother their contact information so she can discuss everything directly with them. It won't be cheap. A quality renovation can cost tens of millions of won, which is probably why the previous owner sold the house so quickly. Don't worry about money. Kyle suggests they live in the apartment for now and move out completely after the renovation. It's almost time to make restaurant reservations. Time to head to the next establishment and enjoy the Christmas party. Kyle will take responsibility for his mother and take care of her. The father can rest unperturbed and sleep peacefully. Kyle and Marco needed a base for their investment business, so Marco bought a house. According to him, the house cost a modest sum, about 4.5 billion won. Kyle asks him what modesty means to him, and Marco replies that it's a philosophical question worth pondering. But it doesn't matter. Kyle has heard enough. Marco will occupy the first floor and Kyle the second. The basement, as Kyle notes, could be converted into an office, or more likely, a comic book room. After unpacking, they will go shopping, but they already have everything they need. Marco says it's not what you buy that matters, but how far you go with your purchases. They come to the hardware store. When asked if they are looking for anything specific, Marco replies that he is just looking around to see what is there first. If Marco wanted, he could buy out the entire mall, so he could take whatever he wanted with him. He asks what kind of TV it is, and the salesperson replies that it is the newly released Samsung QLED TV. This model features a 100-inch 8K display and is priced at 34,600,000 won. Only one unit is on display in the showroom. Marco says he agrees. He will take the most expensive item. The salesperson asks if he has any bonuses or discount cards, and how many months he'd like to pay in installments. Marco says he's come to thank So-sun for the recent good things that have happened in his life. Purchasing one-star item of each type will cost a total of 68.5 million won, which is less than Marco expected, so he pays for it all at once. Kyle asks Marco if he thinks he bought too much. Marco replies that he came to thank him, and now he can look at the furniture. Marco tried to turn the basement into a full-fledged shelter. The workers said their rooms were identical. Now Marco has his own space, and is not limited to a cramped room. It's a gigantic room, the size of a warehouse, filled with figurines, and Marco asks that his taste be respected. It really does look like a workplace. It even looks like they are doing serious work now. There is one more thing missing. This is the company registration document that Marco signed for the last time. Kyle is the CEO and gets 80% of the profits. Marco is the COO and gets 20%. Kyle recently went bankrupt, and now he's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. It sounds like the plot of a web novel. I guess that's why they say you never know where life will take you. The plan is this. We wait for the Eagles' predictions and invest funds. There are no longer any doubts about the Eagles' abilities, but there are some issues. First of all, Kyle won't be able to control it. He won't be able to see the predictions whenever he wants. If I could control this ability, I would know which stocks would rise or fall, where interest rates would go, and invest accordingly to make a profit. He doesn't know if it's supposed to be that way, or he just lacks experience. Secondly, the information provided is very limited. Suppose Kyle sees that the value of land in a certain area will increase tenfold, but he doesn't know whether this will happen in 1 year or 10 years. In the case of L, 6 people had difficulties because they only knew the fact of production cessation, without exact dates. Their main task was to analyze information from Eagle and develop an investment strategy. The third and most troubling issue is the reliability of forecasts. If we assume that the future is predetermined, then your actions can influence it. This is the dilemma of forecasting. Natural disasters are difficult to change, however, but the results of human actions can be easily changed. This is a common theme in comics. The recent purchase of put options did not even affect the end of L6 production. The funds allocated for the option are paid by the finance company, but if So-Sun had paid them, it is unlikely that they would have delayed the completion date to avoid losses. The example of buying land is relevant here. Land values may rise so much that construction will simply be canceled, or the project will be moved to another location. In the end, the Eagle may be right, but in the end it may not win anything. Even in games of similar skill levels, the limits of ability vary depending on the character's level. If Kyle were from a wealthy family, he would win 100 times more often. Then you will have no other choice but to work harder to level up. Marco asks if Kyle can lose the Oracle's eye, and he thinks not. This is another sense that goes beyond the 5 main ones. Although he cannot see anything in front of him at the moment, he feels it. This sensation is clearer than taste or smell. We will then need to focus on managing the Eagle forces, while Marco will take care of their support. The best option is to anticipate major crises, such as the cessation of L6 production. But of course, it will not always be possible to achieve a 50% profit. But if something like this happens again, the financial sector will be devastated. Economic news will continue to talk about shutdowns, and the effects will not be felt for months. Suddenly, Kyle yells at Marco to stop sleeping and look at this. It is alleged that a foreign company was actively buying put options just before So-Sun announced the shutdown, and that the profits allegedly made from such options amount to billions, prompting financial firms to request an investigation from the financial regulator. They took it all too lightly. If you look at the chronology, it's clearly suspicious. At least they should have split it into several stories. They could not have foreseen that the situation would escalate so much at that moment. But they did nothing wrong. If you make a profit by buying stocks expecting prices to rise, going long, you will be praised. But if you make a profit by buying stocks expecting prices to fall, going short, prepare to be criticized. In long positions, you make money along with other investors. And in short positions, you make money when others suffer losses, so no one will be happy for it. In any case, it's not a problem, but they may attract attention again. 2 consecutive lottery wins will raise suspicions in anyone, and you'll have to consider other ways to make money. After all, short selling has its limitations. Unlike long positions, short positions go against the market flow. They are only good for short-term trades, but in the long term, the market will inevitably rise. The global economy has already survived numerous major downturns, 2 world wars, several terrorist attacks, a financial crisis, and much more. Each time the system collapsed and dire forecasts were made. But the market always recovered, learned from its mistakes, and grew. Without another financial crisis, placing billions of dollars in short positions will be impossible. They should invest the majority of their assets in long positions and use short positions only as a response to emergency situations. Therefore, it is necessary to transform OTK into a holding company and acquire shares of other companies. The basic idea is to acquire them based on their growth potential and, in the case of the most successful companies, to take a controlling stake and turn them into subsidiaries. Their goal is to double their capital in 3 years, turning 670 billion into over $1 trillion. They'll take this position and invest several hundred billion in futures and options based on forecasts, a hedging principle. Marco is delighted. The choice is truly the best. Kyle says that he is already absolutely delighted with them. Kyle suggests starting by looking at the Kospi 200, a Korean stock index that includes the 200 largest companies. In fact, it's enough to simply check publicly available reports online. If any forecast emerges in the process, that would be simply wonderful. Kyle's been searching for years and found nothing. Looks like I'll have to analyze every company on KOSPI. It's almost midnight. I didn't expect things to reach a dead end. Marco brings a stack of paper. Apparently, Kyle's eyes hurt from staring at the screen all day, so he printed everything out. Kyle hadn't slept all night, and he knew one thing for sure. They are barking up the wrong tree. No predictions are required to understand this. The direction is correct, but the search method is generally ineffective. If there were a forecast of, say, the 20 best investment opportunities, there would be nothing to worry about. In the case of large companies with market capitalizations in the tens of trillions, nothing will happen. But in the case of companies with market capitalizations of less than 1 trillion, their intervention could cause either a rise in stock prices or a collapse. It's like an elephant jumping into a small pond. The water splashes, and by the time he gets out, the water level has already dropped. Nothing comes easy. The larger the fund, the more difficult it is to manage, asks Marco. What about foreign stocks then? There are emerging markets like Vietnam, India, and China, and big companies like Apple and Google. The idea is good, but without connections it won't work. Marco advises hiring a financial expert with a good understanding of foreign markets. If they want to play in the major leagues, they will definitely need the help of specialists in this field. Even with reliable information, there are limitations to what they can analyze and decide on their own regarding investment strategy. Whether it was a holding company, a hedge fund, or a private equity firm, the best CEOs always had the best teams behind them and were able to create an investment company as a subsidiary of OTK, bringing together the necessary talent under its umbrella. Kyle will determine the direction of investments based on his forecasts and build an organization capable of executing this strategy. Marco, someone's calling. From the look on Kyle's face, he knows who it is. It's incredible that the most valuable employee he wanted to hire called first. Vanessa asks why Marco is not here. He says he moved yesterday. Vanessa asks him to send her his address and stay there, and then leaves. There is only one reason for this meeting. Vanessa looks very angry, probably because Marco made mistakes several times, although this happened much more often than it should have. Vanessa smokes. Marco says passive smoking is harmful to health. The room needs to be ventilated. Vanessa tells him to sit down. She asks what kind of house it is. Marco says that he bought it and now plans to live here. Vanessa asks him to explain what is going on. She asks him where he got the billions in his accounts, and Kyle tells her to put out an ashtray. Marco didn't think that was the reason Vanessa was there. He says there's no point pretending it doesn't matter. The explosion at the L6 station is currently the most talked about topic in the global financial community. The incident led to a collapse in Samsung Electronics shares and the Korean stock market, while financial companies associated with it suffered massive losses. But here's the thing. Rumor has it that before the incident, a certain company bought a large number of put options on Samsung Electronics and Kospi 200 shares and ended up making a huge profit. This company has an account at Golden Gate where Vanessa works, and thanks to this, the balance of the Asian branch account has grown by more than $600 million. There are countless fictitious companies with names made up of random letters, so Vanessa thought OTK was just one of them. But then a high-ranking colleague, whose contact information she provided, called her and said he had transferred more than 10 billion won from an overseas account to a domestic one. Since she opened the account herself, she can check the transaction history. Vanessa was surprised to see 672 billion. This represents a profit of 5,000% on put options. It turns out their story even reaches the Golden Gate Bridge. Vanessa asks if Marco really bought shares in Samsung Electronics, and he answers in the affirmative. Marco asks if it's really that big of a problem. For this reason, the Financial Supervisory Authority requested documents from Golden Gate. This is transaction data from OTK and information from the owner of the company. But this data has not yet been received. Golden Gate doesn't even know who owns the company, only the country where it was founded. Transferring customer information can't be that simple. It is not so easy to refuse the Financial Supervisory Authority. This only applies to national financial institutions. Kyle asks on what basis they requested this data. They are suspected of involvement in insider trading, but they don't even know what it is. Public companies are required to disclose all information that is material to investors, but some information remains confidential within the company. No one can trade on non-public information until it is disclosed. This undermines confidence in financial markets. In the worst case, if their profits are found to be of illegal origin, they will consider it illegal activity and confiscate 672 billion. Vanessa asks who told Marco to do it. He replies that it was Kyle. Vanessa then asks him where he got this information. Kyle doesn't know what to answer. They seem to have no understanding of the current situation. This can't be hidden. If they can't explain it, it will be considered a financial crime. Vanessa demands to know how Kyle obtained this information, or the house will be turned upside down. Marco asks to tell him everything first, but Kyle says he will explain everything himself. Due to several cases of L6 explosions, which may have been caused by defects in the early stages of production, he decided to discontinue its production. And this happened at a time when Sosun's stock was at an all-time high. Having come to this conclusion based on his own analysis, Kyle told Marco about it, and he, taking her word for it, put 13 billion won on the line. So it has nothing to do with insider trading. Although they are hiding part of the story, given the situation, it is simply a matter of self-preservation. Kyle's position is to completely trust his own point of view. Marco's position is to completely trust the opinion of the other person. Vanessa asks if they have heard about the scandal with the bank doesn't bank. This is a case where they bet on the stock price to fall and manipulated it to make a profit. The experts who achieved this only earned 50 million won. But in reality, their income was 10 times that amount. In response to the Doce case, regulations were tightened. Otherwise, brokerage firms and investment funds would have collapsed one after another. In the current situation, it's unlikely everything is under control, and domestic companies are close to losing their entire annual profits. Even despite attempts to hide the truth, Golden Gate lost $20 million, but two investors made money using a diabolical financial instrument in an even more diabolical way. And in this case, they were very lucky to have set up a corporation in an offshore zone. If OTK were a Korean corporation, they would be sitting on metal chairs in the finance department right now. But since they claim it's not insider trading, they have nothing to worry about. They did not manipulate stock prices. But from their point of view, from the point of view of the financial institutions that lost billions, they are their main enemies. Vanessa asks what Marco plans to do with the money in the account. He said he split the company's shares with Kyle. He gets 80% and Marco gets 20%. Kyle is the largest shareholder of OTK. He provided the information and bought the put options, and Marco simply handed him the money. In the financial industry, it's common for investors to receive a larger share of the profits. Even a 50-50 profit split is difficult to understand, and an 80% return is a real shock. This means that OTK is actually owned by Kyle. If they want to continue investing, he needs to be at the helm. This time, everything resolved itself. Marco says he has a plan. He has put aside 13 billion won. This amount will be more than enough for his entire life. Vanessa asks, what can two children do? So they need your help. And Marco will give you 3% of his shares. This amounts to approximately 20 billion won. It can be said that from all his future salaries, 20 billion in one-time income, Marco is a generous otaku. Kyle agrees with her opinion. Perhaps Vanessa is afraid that he will manage OTK irresponsibly. You don't even have to quit your job. You can continue receiving data from Golden Gate, and staying in your current job will actually be more profitable. Vanessa asks Kyle to buy her stronger coffee. A child prodigy from childhood, he entered the economics department of a Korean university with honors, without the need for additional classes, and then got a job at Golden Gate, one of the most demanding investment banks in the world. Vanessa was recognized for her skills and promoted to team leader in the Asia branch. Meanwhile, his brother, who had done nothing for half his life, became a multi-millionaire overnight. I wonder how she felt when he offered her a job. Vanessa agreed to help. She asks Marco to buy her cigarettes, and he asks why him and not Kyle. One look from Vanessa is enough to make Marco leave. Kyle thanks him for agreeing to help. It's unlikely that anyone would turn down 20 billion. If it hadn't been her, they obviously would have found someone else, Kyle notes to himself. Which means they wouldn't have offered her the shares then. This is the first time Marco has tried to do something serious outside of his hobbies. This is the first time Kyle has seen him this motivated. Without it, they wouldn't even have started. Kyle knew how risky this investment was. No matter how confident he was in his abilities, it was too much. Even thinking about it makes him break out in a cold sweat. But he still respects the result. To invest 13 billion and earn 672 is impressive. In that respect, everything is great. Vanessa asks Kyle why he wants to invest. He says he started with a specific goal, but maybe he doesn't have one yet, and that it's good to have a lot of money. In a capitalist society, material abundance is practically synonymous with happiness. He doesn't know where he got this ability from, but now it seems that it is no longer possible to live as before. All great investors achieved success thanks to their unique investment methods, and thus became legends. Kyle doesn't have a unique investment method like theirs, but he does have foresight. In a broader sense, forecasting is an investing method. Luck and intuition also play a significant role. Kyle believes this is what he does best. The financial world isn't as simple as it seems. It's full of experts and scammers. Vanessa has been working in the financial world for almost 10 years and is still learning the ropes. She would rather not see them rushing into that area. Kyle assures that no matter what happens, Marco will not be harmed. Vanessa assures him that Kyle is his partner. She will be happy to cooperate with the CEO of OTK. Kyle would also be happy to collaborate with Vanessa. Thus, they acquired a third, highly qualified team member. OTK will operate as a holding company, and Kyle also plans to create a separate investment company. The question is which company he will choose and what he will do with it. There are many possibilities. Let Kyle know if you need materials. Vanessa also wanted to know if they were planning to change the name. Marco asked what was going on with the OTK company. Vanessa thought it sounded like an abbreviation for otaku, but it's short for Oscar Marco King. Marco doesn't like his name. There are many companies in the world that bear the name of their founders, but there is no need to change the name and break the forecasts. It's best to respect the founder's opinion and leave things as they are. Kyle offers Vanessa 3% of his share, but she is Marco's sister, so it is better to take it from her. Besides, the larger the share of the main shareholder, the better. They need a competent and reliable person to run the investment company, someone who can replace Kyle and implement the plan. He has no other options, but he has already talked to Vanessa about it and asked her to send him materials on the latest market trends. It turns out he's already sent them. It's an internal Golden Gate report, high-quality information that's difficult for ordinary people to access. Marco asks if it's legal to use something like that. He got it legally. Marco seemed to forget that they are Golden Gate's primary clients, and as primary clients, they can request and receive various data. Everything is in English, partially understandable. The main thing is the numbers and graphs. We are talking primarily about the fourth industrial revolution. This transition from a digital society to an era of automation, where everything is interconnected thanks to the development of robotics and artificial intelligence, Marco does not yet understand, just like Kyle. Then they call him. This is Noah Fleming, and I'm inviting you to dinner. Kyle remarks that he looks very good in the suit. Noah says there's something important. He's paying today, so let Kyle eat as much as he wants. This is his last time paying. Kyle asks if Noah needs to go to the academy today. He replies that he quit his job and paid off all his debts. He said he still had a lot to do. It's all thanks to Kyle. He said that the L6 will be discontinued. Noah also confirmed that there were a lot of explosions. Kyle believes he also bought put options on Samsung Electronics shares, but Noah didn't. He didn't think it would go through to the final sale. Realizing that the explosions were continuing, Noah assumed that there was a high probability that the battery would need to be replaced, and if that happened, the manufacturer would suffer large losses. After paying off his debt within a month, he had 700,000 won left, so he bought out all the put options on Samsung SB shares. Noah made 150 million from this. As expected, this is the power of options. It is difficult to stop once you have tasted profit. Kyle only briefly mentioned the possibility of a production stoppage to Noah, and he, like a special person, took full advantage of the opportunity. He left the academy after paying off his debt, and then went to a department store and bought a suit, the kind one would normally wear before an interview. Noah asks how much they made. Kyle is considering how much he should lower his profit forecast. Noah believes that we are talking about 500 billion. He learned from a friend in the financial sector that a foreign company had bought put options on Samsung Electronics shares, so perhaps it was them. Kyle is adamant that there is no way they can get that much capital, and Noah also found this funny at first. However, Marco lost about 10,000 Banto coins. If he had found the encryption key, that money would have been enough for him. It seems Noah was able to figure it out using just these scraps of information. His friend said that the company that used him was probably Japanese. The company is called OTK Company, and Kyle's friend is named Oscar Marco King. Kyle forgot that Noah was known as a genius at Pankook University. If this gets out, Kyle and Marco could be in the papers tomorrow. They'll still have to go through with it, but now isn't the time. Kyle asks to keep this a secret. Noah insists that, as a former president of an investment club, he never talked much, so he can be trusted. Ask where they plan to invest in the future. If they weren't going to continue, there would be no need to create a corporation. But initially it wasn't for investment, but for selling Marco's cryptocurrency. Noah knew Kyle would succeed, but he didn't expect him to do something so big. Beating the market requires more than just math and analysis. Noah invested solely on analysis and failed. I couldn't calculate the odds of an investment firm losing tens of billions of dollars to phishing. They were just unlucky. It took him a long time to realize that there are many things in the market that cannot be calculated. that cannot be written down and solved mathematically. I can calculate the motions of the heavenly bodies, but not the madness of crowds, said Isaac Newton. This is a fairly well-known expression in the financial world. Newton was known as a physicist, but he worked in other fields. The market is driven by fear and madness. No matter how rational a person is, it is difficult for them to remain calm in any situation. Kyle has intuition, which is why Noah chose him to be the next president. He always said that when they drank. Noah asks the question because he came to the interview today in a suit. It looks like he wants to join them. Mr. CEO, let him do what he thinks is best. No matter how developed their intuition and foresight, their capabilities are limited, which is why Kyle invited Vanessa. Financial investments are a battle with numbers. New derivatives are created with a high degree of financial integration. Noah specializes in mathematical analysis. He can draw rational and objective conclusions based on numbers, which is why this man turned to him. From a negative perspective, he was grasping at straws, but even Kyle liked that. It's a basic skill of financiers, to seize any opportunity to make money. Kyle says he is currently the CEO of OTK. He needs a person competent enough to turn his idea into reality. Noah is older, so you need to pour with both hands. Kyle would never hear those words from him again. From now on, he intends to study the market in detail. Age doesn't matter. What matters is ability. A capable person is someone who can make a big contribution, and Kyle has achieved that, so it makes sense to work with him. In fact, there is no doubt that Noah is a more capable person than Kyle and Marco. It is the CEO's responsibility to attract such people. He was accepted. Noah finally caught his breath. He was a little nervous. He asks if he should call Kyle CEO or president. Kyle replies that he can call him whatever he usually does. They'll decide on official titles when they have a large staff. The team now includes Marco's older sister, Vanessa King. She also heads Golden Gate's Asian office and provides extensive assistance in legal and administrative matters. Noah was said to be a popular tutor. He's not very popular, but when he said he was leaving, they offered him a promotion if he stayed. It would have been better if they had done it earlier. Everything would have been fine if he had stayed, but he was already tired of sitting in one place. Noah wants to ride the wave of change in the industry. For example, when the Empli smartphone first appeared on the market, manufacturers operating at that time either ignored it or ridiculed it. They believed that no one would buy a device that simply combined existing functions that were long outdated. Geniuses change the world, and ordinary people only notice it after the changes have already happened. But even without special insight, you can ride this wave. Right now you have such an opportunity. Peter was busy teaching, but probably kept an eye on the situation. Marco suggests making a toast if everyone agrees, for a company involved in quality control. In the morning, Kyle is found lying on the floor. Tomorrow is New Year. Kyle calls his mother. They agreed to meet tomorrow. Kyle believes that some kind of investment idea must emerge, a hint as to where to invest next. Marco woke up, tormented by thirst. Kyle's phone rings. Marco sees it's Lauren, and Kyle asks him if he wants to get some more sleep. Marco says that Kyle is being very kind today and wants to answer the phone for him as a thank you. Lauren thinks she didn't save his number because he hasn't answered his calls in a long time. Kyle says he just woke up, but Lauren called him a few days ago and asked if he had eaten. Kyle says he was going to do that. Lauren was going to eat too, maybe he'd like to join in. Now that I think about it, she was the one who found out about the L6 being discontinued, so I should at least reward her for that. They agreed to meet at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in front of the Galleria department store. Marco asks who Lauren is, and Kyle replies that she is a college freshman. At such an important moment, the CEO of OTK cannot attend meetings. He must remember his responsibilities. Kyle offers to talk about it when he gets back. Kyle is almost out of cash and hasn't gotten his card back yet. Everything in the department store is probably expensive. Kyle asks Marco to lend him money. There's no point in having billions if they're all sitting in overseas accounts. You will need 100,000 won. Marco advises spending them wisely, without excesses. Kyle is dating Lauren. She suggests ordering udon. There's a popular place nearby. Lauren was surprised when Kyle said he was coming to her neighborhood. He replied that he had moved and was now living with a friend nearby. Since she lives in Gangnam, which means they will see each other more often as neighbors, Kyle wonders if she has always been this friendly. It's unlikely that Lauren would behave like this in real life, because she was friends with her ex and can't stand excessive kindness. I wonder why she treats him so well. She looks good when she eats. Lauren says she will pay. She was the one who suggested meeting, so the bill is on her. Next time, Kyle can treat her to something even better. Lauren says she didn't want to eat alone, so she's glad he came. Kyle thinks no one cooks at his house, But it turns out he lives alone. In that house, in a gigantic apartment next to the Khan River, Lauren suggests taking a look. The complex has a great walking trail and a residents-only cafe with a river view where you can enjoy coffee. Kyle says it's a great place. Lauren thinks where she moved to is probably even better. It's funny how people rarely visit the attractions close to home. She had lived here since childhood, moved out during the renovations, but returned about 6 months ago. Her parents work abroad. Real estate prices here are very high. The smallest apartments cost around 2.5 billion won. There really is no limit to perfection in Gangnam. If an apartment has a view of the Han River, that's a big plus. But still, 2.5 billion won for an apartment is too much. When it first hit the market, its price was around 2 billion. Even then, people complained that the price was too high. If they had invested then, the profit would now be 500 million. Lauren wants Kyle to answer the question honestly. Ever since they went together to change phones, he's been thinking about it a lot. There is something that is bothering her. She asks how Kyle knew about the L6 being discontinued. That is the question. Kyle recalls that she had already asked him about this on the phone, but he had avoided answering. Immediately after his release, everyone went crazy. Some even called him a bomb. Kyle seemed so confident that Lauren wondered if one of the suppliers had tipped him off. He claims that he has no such connections. He himself foresaw this, so it is worth hoping that the eagle will appear again soon. It would have been great to know this in advance. It would have saved Lauren the hassle of transferring contacts and photos. The worst part is that his mother is very upset. She says she would have sold the shares earlier if she had known about it. They're slowly recovering, but she's still in the red. Maybe she should sell them now. Kyle says that if he were her, he would stop them. Although they are currently experiencing a downturn, everything will return to normal with the launch of the new model. Lauren asks whether people will continue to buy Samsung phones, even after everything that happened. Kyle says the incident only demonstrates users' loyalty to the brand. Most, including Lauren, chose to exchange their phones rather than return them. The main products of the Samsung company are not telephones, but semiconductors. The fourth industrial revolution is based on communications. Semiconductors are the essence of the Internet of Things. In a monopolistic industry such as semiconductor manufacturing, supply is inflexible due to the nature of the business, and it is difficult to balance supply and demand. But in the case of semiconductors, everything will only grow. And since Samsung is the largest company producing them, its profit is guaranteed. But this is just his personal opinion. He is not an expert. However, even so-called financial experts can be wrong. Many fund managers can't keep up with the market, and if no one is sure about anything, maybe Lauren should take his word for it. Therefore, he will not sell shares for now. He bought them with his pocket money when the stock price dropped, and now he's in trouble and only has 20 shares left. With a house worth over 20 billion won and stocks worth over 20 million won, invested entirely with his own pocket money, Kyle wonders what kind of family he comes from. Here, Lauren meets her neighbor, who tells her that she cannot stay at home. She thinks Kyle is her boyfriend. Lauren has grown up so much that it's time to get married, and Kyle says that they just go to school together. Lauren says she just turned 20, but in her neighbor's time, people her age were already having children. She offers Lauren money, but Lauren says it's not worth it, that she has enough. When your grandmother offers you something, you should say thank you. This woman has been taking care of Lauren since she was a child, and used to own a store in a shopping mall. She currently lives in the house next door. She owns 3 houses, including the one where her children live. The lowest price for the 3 houses is almost 7 billion, which is far beyond the means of the average grandmother. Here, everyone is just like her. Everyone has pockets full of money. According to Lauren, 40 years ago, her neighbor moved here not for investment, but simply to live, and then bought another apartment to live closer to her children. The apartment then cost 18 million won. Over the course of several years, the residential complex has undergone significant reconstruction. As a result, the 2 buildings were converted into the 3 separate residential units they are today. During this period, housing prices rose from 18 million to 1.5 billion. 3 years ago, the average price had risen to 2 billion. If we look at the net profit alone, the biggest gainer was the woman they had just met. Companies operate the same way. The main goal of most corporations is to go public. After appearing on the Kosdaq, the founders, initial investors, and managers of the IPO, the first public sale of shares in a private company, receive enormous profits and celebrate. Investors who buy shares after a company goes public receive little or no profit. But to invest in a successful company, it's best to do so before it goes public, and ideally in the early stages, to maximize profits. Kyle chose a completely wrong path. Finally, he realized what he had to do. He says he has to go and suggests they have coffee next time. Just like last time, he learned a useful lesson from the meeting. If all goes according to plan, Kyle will invite Lauren to a lavish dinner. And again, he runs away. He sends Vanessa a message. She needs something. He will send her a list. Kyle comes home and says that now is not the time to play, that he knows what they should do. Marco believes he had a vision. Kyle tells him that's not entirely true and asks him to listen. After listening to Lauren's story, she realized that renovating an apartment and going public had similarities. So Kyle went to Lauren just because she was a freshman in college and asks if that was really the only thing that interested Marco in her story. During the Industrial Revolution, new industries replaced old ones, just as automobiles replaced other automobiles. But it took more than a century for automobiles to disappear completely, whereas in the modern world, some industries are replaced in less than 50 years. Short-term rental platform Airbnb has surpassed Hilton Hotel in revenue without owning a single room. And the car exchange service Uber has surpassed the traditional GN market. Each of them was an ordinary foal, but grew into a unicorn, whose value is estimated in tens of billions. In the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, such cases are becoming increasingly frequent, although their duration is short, averaging 3 years. But some, like those Kyle mentioned, survive and become corporations that will shape the future of the economy. The first step is to select companies that have a chance of survival, although this sounds easy. Promising companies can go bankrupt overnight. Now Marco understood why Kyle started talking about apartments. It is proposed to move the investment deadlines to an earlier date, even when it was unknown whether the residential complex would be restored, thanks to the feeling of something grand. Only he, a promising newcomer, understood the true value of this undertaking. Finding promising newcomers so small and fragile is no easy task, no matter how you look at it. But for them, it is the ability to predict. They use forecasting to find successful newcomers. Their next mission is hunting for unicorns. The first morning of the new year has arrived. Health comes first. Don't overdo it and beware of scammers. Marco is taking care of Kyle. His mother asks if Marco wants more. He says yes. Maybe he is eating too much. Kyle's mother can take the bus, but a taxi has already been called. The house is great, and the area is great. Kyle suggests we move here. We can find an even better place. The house his father built is the best. Seeing how happy his mother is makes Kyle want to work even harder. She'll come to them again. Kyle needs to watch his diet. He left the soup in the freezer. Now it's time to get back to work. Kyle received a list from Golden Gate Bank, a seed investment bank. They even included those who were almost rejected. Those who have already attracted investment can always find other investors. Moreover, and this is of utmost importance, these companies have proven themselves to a certain extent and are ready for rapid growth by attracting investment funds. They won't see him for a whole week. But for Vanessa, everything is going as usual. Daily monitoring of funds, bonds, and commodity exchanges, and monitoring global political and economic trends, starts early, ends late, and often requires overtime during peak hours. Getting hired at Golden Gate, landing your dream job in finance, and becoming a team leader is something that not all talented people achieve, no matter how hard they try. Kyle asks if Vanessa and Marco are definitely related by blood. In any case, it will be difficult to figure this out on your own, so planning is necessary. But Marco got him into this for exactly that reason. If it was intentional, then he's a genius. That night, Marco sleeps, and Kyle continues to work. A familiar feeling arises here. Something new this time. Kyle throws papers all over the room. Marco wakes up and says that the lack of a prediction is no reason to start a pogrom. Kyle replies that there is a reason. He can't explain it, but his perception seems to have improved, and he asks to have the sheets arranged so that they don't overlap. The main thing is that Kyle sees this information. Kyle orders everyone to throw everything he gives Marco into the shredder. This isn't the final result, but rather the initial stage of eliminating unsuccessful options. In the second stage, you'll concentrate and read more carefully until you achieve this feeling. From this moment on, the struggle for resistance begins. But this isn't Marco's fight. This is Kyle's fight. He places the papers on the pool table. Another night is approaching. Meanwhile, Marco is pondering which character to choose. 10 days later, the list is reduced to a small pile. Marco advises Kyle to relax, but adds that if he starts to rest now, he will lose control of himself. He was able to do so much in 10 days only because his senses were heightened. The more he used them, the stronger they became. Marco doesn't even listen. We need to hold out a little longer. Kyle is one of the stars. He sees the unicorn and the unicorn sees him. He runs towards Kyle, and it flies right over him. He sees something. Unicorns appear from blue stars. He found them. Kyle wakes up. He asks her how long she slept, and Marco replies that it was about 20 hours. Apparently, she passed out while reading documents and dreaming of unicorns. Kyle doesn't remember anything. Marco says he's written everything down. They have a list they can work from. Their investment targets are companies that have not yet gone public, and they may need a dedicated team to handle the negotiation. It will take several months to set up an investment firm and assemble a team. Companies rejected by Golden Gate will seek new investors. We need to act quickly. Kyle has an idea on how best to proceed to ensure no one is missed in the forecasts. It could be called a two-pronged strategy. After some time, Noah arrives at Golden Gate. There, they want to introduce him to someone. He is so nervous that he arrived very early. Maybe he should come now. These are very busy people. It's better to wait outside. If they say they're Golden Gate brokers, startup executives will want to meet with them. Vanessa asks if Kyle has checked his letter about the brokerage commission. It's 2% of the total investment. The commission on $500 million will be $9 million. Even if they decide not to invest anything, the minimum commission will be $3 million. Marco asks why the commission is so high. Kyle replies that without Vanessa, the commission would be double, and they will have to pay it whether they want to or not. The scale of capital involved is on a completely different level than Noah's. Marco asks where he can find foreign startups to invest in. Kyle replies that those who need them will find them themselves. They just need to get an invitation. If the name OTK is used in Korea, the financial regulator will not remain indifferent. They did nothing wrong, but the problem is that their identities will be revealed during the investigation. The media and society will not remain silent. Details of his past will be spread all over the internet. They will criticize not only his income from short positions, but also the fact that his corporation is registered in an offshore zone. Although both are happy with their current life, it will definitely be unpleasant. Moreover, it is obvious that even the address of Kyle's mother's residence will be revealed. But that doesn't mean we should forget about investing in Korean startups. We just need to find a way to do so. He said they would use a two-pronged strategy, because everything would be fine as long as OTK did not interact with them directly. Kyle calls Noah. Apparently, this was the man she wanted to introduce to Vanessa. Kyle says it's his university senior, Noah Fleming, who he mentioned earlier. Noah didn't expect to find himself talking to the head of Golden Gate's Asian branch. Kyle suggests they act as usual. Noah asks how he knew what was behind the door. He was always punctual, so Kyle assumed he would arrive on time. Noah would certainly follow the director's schedule and wait at the door, so Kyle assumed he would wait for the right moment. He probably overheard their conversation. They plan to open an investment company as a subsidiary of OTK. The corporation will own all the shares. The registered capital is 70 billion won, and Kyle wants to entrust this company to Noah. At the initial stage, they will be paid an annual salary of 100 million won, and depending on their performance, they will receive shares in the subsidiary company, 2% per annum for 10 years, a total of 20%. This is like a stock option. 70 billion could be used to create a full-fledged corporation, and Kyle trusts Noah with that kind of capital. The bold statements he made at his last meeting were based on formulas that Noah considered abstract and had nothing to do with reality. But now he has a man in front of him who actually works with these numbers, who also invested money wisely and achieved success starting from scratch. And Kyle's friend is here for a reason too. Although Noah seemed out of place, his mind was already running through his options. He had been counting on becoming an assistant, not the CEO of a subsidiary. His legendary investment decisions as a student, his assessment of the L6 put options, and Noah's one-note approach to Kyle, his determination to overcome the bankruptcy crisis and return everything responsibly. It will be difficult to find someone more suitable than Noah. There is still time while they are looking for an office, so you might want to consider it. In the meantime, Noah had already reached a preliminary agreement regarding the position he would occupy. He said the sooner the better. This wasn't just any place. Noah had already considered various options for where he could open an office. The location and size were exactly what Kyle wanted. He said Noah was a perfect fit. Now that everyone is here, we can choose a name for the company. But don't tell me Marco still wants to call it the Royal Blood Company. The fact that Kyle hasn't changed a bit in this relentless fight for the lead is what's most impressive. Noah, although surprised, understood the situation based on the current conversation. If you understand correctly, OTK wants to invest in domestic companies, maintaining a special relationship with Golden Gate, but hiding the connection with the subsidiary. The letter K in OTK can be seen as a symbol of a guardian, a protector, so the company name K is quite appropriate. A one-letter name that sounds strong. Kyle likes it too. He then congratulates Noah on his new position as CEO of investment company K. After the meeting, Vanessa helped Kyle set up a branch of company K in Korea, gave Noah a USB drive with a list of new Korean companies, assigned Golden Gate employees to company K, and delegated all authority to company K. They soon arrive at the hotel. Marco asks why they chose this particular location, as the ocean view is much better here. Kyle replies that the airport is nearby, making it much easier to keep an eye on investors. Golden Gate lawyers will attend the meetings. They definitely need an international expert. He will arrive in the conference room a little later, since the airport is nearby, probably soon. She's already here. This is Mia Park, a lawyer from the Golden Gate legal department. According to Marco, Kyle didn't expect to see the young woman. Apparently, the CEO wanted to go on another date. It turns out Mia speaks Korean. His grandfather is Korean. Mia will unpack her suitcase and come back. Kyle asks her where she is from. Vanessa replies that Mia is Korean from Hong Kong, and thanks to her family, she speaks 4 languages: Cantonese, Mandarin, English, and Korean. She's the same age as Kyle, and there really are amazing people in the world. Vanessa has already told Mia about Kyle. Although inside Golden Gate, they don't know the owners of OTK, she knows that they have a special relationship. Lawyers are bound by confidentiality, so Kyle has nothing to worry about. He says that if Vanessa feels she can be trusted, then so be it. Vanessa asks if Kyle will be actively involved in the meeting. He completely delegates all bureaucratic powers, but will be present in person. He wants to see with his own eyes what kind of people run the company. There are 2 types of corporate investments: loans and stock purchases. In the second case, owning shares allows you to participate in management, and this sometimes leads to difficulties in dividing rights. Marco says they will simply enjoy the benefits of growth without interfering with the company's operations. Kyle asks Marco if he's nervous, and he replies that Vanessa and Mia should be nervous. The suit, bought in a hurry, looks very strange, but, judging by everything, it is very comfortable. Perhaps it's because they are the financial elite. They look so relaxed, as if it's part of their daily life. You should at least check the schedule. Mia asks what happened. Kyle doesn't answer. Meet Hugo Ferris and Patrick Reeves. Successful companies must be able to convey the essence of their business to consumers. Kyle isn't quite sure. Hugo says Facet's goal is to become the Netflix for adults. The adult content industry in the US is currently valued at $15 billion, and globally, its estimated value could reach hundreds of billions. If illegal activity is included, it would be 10 times that amount. Current companies providing such content are simply following old business models and haven't kept up with changes. Marco asks what they're talking about, and Kyle starts talking about market analysis. A successful example of Hugo and Patrick's Faceit concept is Netflix, which uses large amounts of data to deliver desired content to users, intending to use the latest technology to create original content and plan to dominate the online video services market in the adult industry. Vanessa asks if they think it's a problem that Faceit will be limited to adult content. Hugo replies that the amount of adult content produced worldwide every day would be enough for a person to last a lifetime. The genres are also divided in detail. There is something for everyone and for every taste. Vanessa asks if people really watch so much adult content that they can always find it if they want. It's unlikely that Vanessa knows more about adult content than Marco or Kyle. After negotiations, they invested $9 million to acquire 80% of the shares of Faceit. The next meeting was with representatives of Max and Milo's M Pizza, where the use of automated equipment to reduce labor costs and food preparation in delivery vans brought the idea of delivering freshly baked pizzas to life. Delivery of fresh and delicious pizza is a real innovation. In the United States, for example, people are very fond of pizza and are likely to be sensitive to even the slightest changes in taste. After another long discussion, they invested $7.5 million in M Pizza. Kyle is very tired. It's not hard to just sit down, but they work with such enormous sums that it becomes mentally exhausting. He's surprised by how calmly Vanessa handles everything. They have several meetings in a row tomorrow, so it's best to get a good night's sleep. However, Kyle decides to get some fresh air. Staying in a 5-star hotel and investing in new businesses could be the success Daphne was talking about. Kyle meets Mia and is surprised that she is exercising at this time of day. Mia says that after a long flight, she decided to stretch her legs and go for a short jog before bed. She just finished. Mia offers Kyle a beer. He asks Mia if this is her first time in Korea. This is his 3rd time here. although this is his first time here for work. Their arrival helped them a lot. Mia found this interesting. She couldn't believe that OTK, the company that had revolutionized the financial industry, was owned by Vanessa's younger brother and his friend. L6 aircraft explosions have become a global problem. Not only financial institutions, but even the Golden Gate Company could not avoid gigantic losses. Against this backdrop, an unknown company, OTK, made hundreds of millions, and thanks to this, Golden Gate's bank account in Asia grew by $600 million, attracting everyone's attention. Kyle knew the general details of the situation, but only heard Vanessa's side of the story. Now, when people say it to his face, it feels completely different. What he did caught the attention of the entire financial world. Kyle says he was just lucky. Predicting the end of L6 production and blindly investing in options is not just a matter of luck. If it weren't for Marco's money and his persistence to do everything on his own, without the support of Vanessa and Noah, no matter what he planned, he would never have achieved such results on his own. Many people think that OTK is a Japanese investment company. The name is easily misinterpreted. Mia thought it was a joke, but when she learned the name of Kyle's friend, she understood everything, albeit unconsciously. But fortunately, it sounds like the name of a foreign company. They would like to drink more, but they should also think about tomorrow. They will see each other tomorrow. Mia remembers being interested in something. She asks Kyle which actor he likes. He would like to keep it a secret. Today they have a meeting with representatives of a Chinese startup. China has been experiencing economic growth over the past decade. Many people are starting their own businesses, and the number of Chinese startups is growing every day. Like bamboo after rain. They specialize in transport logistics. Despite the fact that railways have already been laid across the country, China still depends on transport logistics, the main problem of which, according to a logistics expert, is the lack of systematic management. For example, if a truck from Shanghai delivers goods to Xi'an, and on the way back it finds that it cannot be loaded, it has to return empty. The two companies have developed an app that allows transport agencies and drivers to coordinate their work to optimize delivery routes. This app will reduce logistics costs by 30%. Vanessa asks if they can build such a large network on their own. Reducing the number of flights also helps address transport and environmental concerns, and may even win significant support from the Chinese government, which is also concerned about these issues. The atmosphere seems tense. They are talking about something, and Kyle does not understand a word of Chinese. Mia says in Chinese that they are not scammers. They value your ideas highly. The startup representatives are surprised that Mia speaks Chinese and ask her where she is from. Kyle doesn't know what Mia said, but his mood improved. The logistics manager, who seemed to distrust them, became more decisive, and negotiations about shares and investments progressed more freely. The remaining contracts were secured through Vanessa's skillful negotiations. Once the companies to invest in have been selected, Kyle has nothing else to do. Vanessa is amazing. I still have a lot to learn from her. They haven't had a day off for a very long time. Marco says he will work from his bedroom. Mia asks Kyle if he is busy. She wants him to show her soul. Vanessa asks him if he's asking Kyle out on a date. You could say that. Mia then goes to get ready and suggests meeting in the hall in an hour. This might be some kind of Hong Kong joke. Kyle is waiting for Mia in the hall. Mia asks if she looks okay. Suddenly, Marco comes up to Kyle and hands him the key. He gives her a car. Marco can only trust Kyle. He suggests not to take it as anything special and just enjoy the date. Let him be careful and not harm his precious Kumi. Kyle has seen her so many times, but he still doesn't know her name. He asks if Mia wants to go somewhere. She wants to enter a Korean university. Before this, Mia had only visited places and attractions related to work. Vanessa often told him about this university, and Kyle also studied there. Kyle doesn't mind showing up at the university. The problem is that they are driving Marco's car. At least it's good that it's vacation time now. If word got out that he was driving such a car, the very thought of it would make him feel sick. They come to the university. Mia realizes how enormous it is and asks if visitors are allowed. Kyle replies that some rooms are for students only. Stop thinking about this car. Then someone calls Kyle. If they see a car, then if it's a dream, it's time to wake up. The student asks why they put something like that in the car. Isn't Kyle ashamed? It's none of your business what other people put in their cars. She says she should think about whoever sees this, and her mood immediately darkens. It's Tessa Lee, the most arrogant girl in the business department, and she hasn't changed a bit. They tell her not to pay attention to it, that it has been like this since she was born, that Kyle hasn't seen her for a long time, so he's gotten a little used to it. Tessa calls Daphne and Preston, and now it's definitely time for Kyle to wake up. Preston asks what this meeting is for. Tessa says it's understandable why Kyle's parents' business went bankrupt, and that he's going through hard times. but it's still wrong to drive that car to college. Kyle asks Tessa to be conscientious. She's outraged. How dare he raise his voice at her? Her gaze already expresses aggression. She'll report him to the police. Mia thinks that these students are Kyle's friends. The boys are surprised to see who this beauty is. Mia introduces herself and says that she works at Golden Gate, after which she gives them her business card. It makes an impression. The students think Mia is dating Kyle, and Tessa decides that he did the wrong thing because Mia is a lawyer. Preston knows her. He asks her if Mia is in Korea for work or traveling. Mia replies that she has important work here, but today she can say she's traveling. She and Kyle were stuck in a hotel for a few days, so she asked him to show her around a Korean university. The guys decided that they were bored together at the hotel. Kyle insists that's not true. Preston gives Mia his business card. He works for GH Constructions. His father is the president of the company, and they have close ties to Golden Gate. Mia knows this. Golden Gate provides financing for industrial development projects in Indonesia, which are managed by GH Constructions. Golden Gate provided funding for this company. Preston gives Kyle his business card, inviting him to call any time if he needs help. Wondering if GH Constructions can help you? Kyle says it gives him confidence, which confuses Preston. Daphne wants to leave. Preston says goodbye. He is glad to meet Mia. The boys invite her to have lunch with them. They have a lot of questions about the Golden Gate Bridge. Tessa thinks there's nothing important about this company, and Kyle carries Mia around like a trophy. After that, Mia could hardly stand the barrage of questions, and so their tour of the university ended. Seoul is beautiful at night. Kyle heard Hong Kong is amazing at night too. Mia says the girl who got into the big car was pretty. So this is Daphne Foster. She's really great, just like Mia told Marco once. They met at the beginning of the semester, broke up less than a year later, and Kyle joined the army right after his vacation. Mia asks Kyle if he likes Daphne, and he says no. They broke up a long time ago. From tomorrow, they will be busy with business again. Mia had a great date today, and Kyle too. Preston soon learns that Daphne was dating Kyle. She thinks Preston is jealous, but he denies it, and it's not that he didn't know about their relationship. Preston notices that Kyle has an unusual car. Daphne says she has a strange friend, Oscar Marco King, and this is most likely his car. Preston wonders what kind of relationship he might have with a Golden Gate lawyer. Apparently she works in the Asian branch, where Marco's older sister also worked. Everything was fine, but Preston was worried about something else. Kyle's behavior didn't change even after he learned of Preston's origins. In a capitalist society, having a lot of money is power in itself. The Korean university president, administrators, professors, and students Preston met with throughout the day seemed friendly at first glance, but they always bowed their heads to the power of money. But the conversation with him resembled a normal conversation between students, which made Preston feel uncomfortable. This is the kind of attitude that people in a similar situation or with a similar income usually exhibit. Preston says Daphne's ex-boyfriend is quite an interesting person. Since that day, Kyle has changed a lot. At the next meeting, they stated that the development budget was $5 million, but it looked like it could be reduced to $2.5 million through internal cuts. But $5 million is a small amount, and Kyle is surprised by how big these scams have become. RCIT is based on architectural design using artificial intelligence, which will continue to evolve thanks to machine learning. Kyle asks what the limits of RCIT's design capabilities are, whether it will be able to design multi-story buildings, for example. The startup's representative is absolutely confident of this. Thanks to RCIT's learning speed, it will be possible to build even skyscrapers in the near future. RCIT's goal is to continuously recognize design drawings and schematics to enable the design of increasingly complex buildings in the future. Kyle likes the idea and suggests implementing it without management interference or internal cuts, since although South Korea's construction potential is world-class, it still lacks a developed construction industry. They invest in RCIT. Marco asks Kyle what machine learning is. The next meeting will be at 7 o'clock. Mia is going to play squash and invites Kyle to join her, but he says he's out of shape. The last time Kyle had barged in unsuspectingly, she had eliminated him within 30 minutes so he wouldn't get caught in anything else. Mia invites Marco to play, but he is not thrilled with the offer either. Kyle remarks that Marco must have difficulty with English, but he tries very hard in meeting. Whenever someone has a great idea, like the guys from Face It, Marco has to help because his sister doesn't know anything about it. Once you spend money, you should at least know what you are spending it on. Marco asks why Kyle always invests in things like this. Maybe he should invest in something explosive that will make a lot of money. Otherwise, the tension will disappear. Kyle asks if he knows Leo Hartman. His name sounds familiar to me. I think he is the CEO of Softball. The correct name is Softbox. There is an interesting story about Leo Hartman related to Alibaba. the Chinese trading platform. In its early days, it was a small company thriving in the Chinese e-commerce market, in which Abe held a controlling stake. When SoftBox CEO Leo Hartman arrived in Beijing on business, Alibaba founder Derek Fontaine immediately flew there and requested a meeting. After a 2-hour conversation, Leo Hartman invested $20 billion. Of course, competing with Abe was usually perceived as an attempt to throw eggs at a stone, so Leo Hartman received a severe reprimand from the SoftBox board of directors. 20 years later, Abe was unable to overcome its losses and left the Chinese market, while Alibaba gained a dominant position in the Chinese e-commerce market and entered the New York Stock Exchange. The current market capitalization is $330 billion, which is approximately 360 trillion won, and is larger than that of Samsung Electronics. SoftBox acquired a 30% stake in Alibaba for 22 billion won, generating a profit of approximately 110 trillion won. Marco said the tension goes away unless they invest in something explosive. Your investing method may not yield quick results, but as with Leo Hartman, only those who decide to invest quickly will reap the rewards. A startup's chances of success are less than 1%, but with foresight, 1% becomes 100%. Leo Hartman planted a gigantic seed worth 220 billion in fertile soil, and it grew to 110 trillion. They plant 670 billion seeds worldwide. Take your time and enjoy the process. Vanessa appears and asks if they are finished talking. She offers to arrange a meeting. He just received a call from a company Kyle had been wanting to meet for a long time. Vanessa spoke with her representative, and they agreed to meet. They will fly to Korea tomorrow. Not all the startups they applied to were ultimately suitable. Some found other sources of investment or had already been acquired, and Carlos declined his offer. They offer investments. It is unclear why they should refuse them. They were unable to allocate the desired investment volume or choose an appropriate investment method. In short, they need a lot of money. They meet with Caro's CEO Ethan Foley and CFO Nikolai Kovacs. Kovacs thinks that Kyle and Marco are friends. Ask who makes decisions at OTK. Vanessa has full powers. Their solutions are OTK solutions. Caros needs $100 million. Ethan Foley asks if it's possible. If you are interested in financial opportunities, then this is certainly possible. They came on their own, but it seemed they weren't expecting anything special. Ethan then offers to pitch the company on the project. Vanessa is already familiar with the details of the case and offers to discuss the current complexity of the situation at Caros. Vanessa would like to hear it from them in person. An information session dedicated to the transformation of modern cars into complex electronic devices begins. There are two hot topics in this area right now: electric vehicles and driverless cars. In the case of electric vehicles, hardware changes involve moving from internal combustion engines to batteries, while in self-driving cars, software changes involve transferring control to the car. Since autonomous driving is at the core of future cars, many automotive and IT companies are actively involved in its development. For 5 years, AMZ, the largest e-commerce company in the US, owned 41% of the shares, and the Korean company Unsong Motors owned 40%. The remaining 19% was owned by Japanese electronics company Hitachi, and its joint venture is called Caros. A year later, having suffered defeat from competitors, Hitachi sold all his shares in Caros and AMZ, and after a thorough analysis of the situation, abandoned the development of driverless cars. Unsong Motors, which bought the shares sold by Hitachi and AMZ, effectively became the parent company of Caros. Vanessa asks why Unsong Motors is trying to sell Caros now. The expected synergy of cooperation with IT companies during the creation of the joint venture was disrupted, and at the same time, Unsong MD, a subsidiary of the group, managed to develop a limited edition self-driving car. Thus, Unsong Motors hopes to recoup at least part of its investment by selling various patents and developments to Caros. If this happens, only the Caros name will remain. Marco doesn't understand what he just heard. It can be said that Unsong Motors currently owns a controlling stake in Caros and wants to sell these shares to recover its investment. Unsong Motors is asking $100 million for its shares. It turned out that Kyle knew all this. They need to talk. Vanessa apologizes. They will go out for a while and then come back. Kyle asks Marco why he was making so much noise. He doesn't understand why she's so nice to Unsong Motors. Marco doesn't want anything good between them at all. Mia asks if there are any problems with this company. You'll have to ask Kyle about that. He asks Mia if she knows what Unsong Motors is, and she replies that it is the largest car company in Korea. That's true, but that's not all. Korea's second largest business group, Unsong Motors Group, has many manufacturing-related subsidiaries, such as Unsong Steel, Unsong MD, and Unsong RT, with first, second, and third-tier partners in its branches. It is a colossal manufacturing empire, the center of which is the Unsong Motors Group. This commendable Korean company ranks 5th in the world in the automobile industry. She is also the reason for the destruction of Kyle's family. The shock that directly led to his father's death was caused by Unsong Motors. Kyle's father was the director of a small metal parts company with 10 employees, and one day he was informed that Unsong Motors would be using his new suspension, the device that connects the wheels to the body of a car. It's an integrated suspension that Kyle's father spent years developing and successfully patenting. The product is excellent, but experts have concluded that some modifications are needed to adapt to the new model. This product will be used in new models of Unsong Motors vehicles. In addition, it is under development, and the company would like to continue receiving new samples. The advanced technology of this suspension needs to be presented at the head office. It's unclear if such a small plant can handle the required amount of nutrients, but they will try. Kyle's father told his wife that they needed to significantly increase production capacity to meet the needs of Unsong Motors. If they complete the assigned tasks, debts and difficulties will quickly disappear. After some time, it turned out that Unsong Motors had terminated the contract. All newly developed samples were provided in accordance with requests for production expansion. Apparently, they created a copy of the product based on their samples, and this is already happening. It looks like they've even filed a patent in advance. Unsong Motors had this in mind from the very beginning. Kyle's father collapsed and died without ever regaining consciousness, leaving the family in enormous debt. Mia wonders if this is possible. If they suffered losses as a result of the unilateral termination of the contract and the theft of the equipment, can they receive compensation? Any foreign lawyer will confirm this to you. Mia has extensive legal knowledge but knows little about Korea, where it is extremely rare for a small company to win a patent case against a large one. Even if this long and difficult battle is won, a conflict with Unsong Motors, which dominates the domestic market by 70%, will be tantamount to a death sentence for the automobile market. But that's not all. They undermine domestic demand and are known for treating consumers like idiots. Kyle suggests discussing business matters. Even putting aside the emotional aspects, Vanessa is against it. Buying an asset that both companies are about to abandon for $100 million is foolish, and Keros has neither the experience nor the products that could be launched immediately. Kyle asks if 100 million is a reasonable number. It's cheap compared to the money they spent on buying the shares, but they won't even get 50 million from selling the patents and core technology, so they're asking for double that. The remaining investment amount is $120 million. Mia doesn't understand why Kyle chose Keros. The risk is high, and there must be a reason why Unsong Motors is trying to sell them. Marco is categorically against this. Only Unsong Motors will benefit from it, and it will not be able to invest in other companies. That's why everyone is against it. Kyle chose companies based on projections, not numbers. And of course, unbeknownst to him, Vanessa and Mia voted against him. And Marco refuses, even though he knows everything. Vanessa thinks it's best to decline, but her job is to consider the options and offer advice, and the final decision is up to Kyle. After all, he is the CEO of OTK. In fact, he doesn't want Unsong Motors to be happy. If they were told they were going to buy $100 million worth of shares, they would be very happy. Common sense dictates that it's best not to invest in these companies. They have little money left to invest, and there are many other good alternatives. This would have been a reasonable choice, but the forecast gave a completely opposite answer. Reality and forecast contradict each other. Kyle says we need to meet with the CEO of Keros. Ethan Foley says it's difficult. They came because he couldn't make it due to his schedule. It will be difficult for a director to come to Korea. At this stage, it is necessary to carry out detailed coordination regarding investments, also taking into account their circumstances. This is a $100 million business. A meeting with the CEO is a perfectly reasonable request. If the meeting doesn't happen, they'll have to find another investor. Vanessa is not acting as a proxy. This is an official meeting request from the CEO of OTK. In that case, they will contact him. Ethan asks when it would be convenient to set a date for the meeting. Since they've already discussed everything, they can afford to be a little more stubborn. It's Kyle's decision, so Marco doesn't say anything else. But he's not sure if everything is okay. Kyle assures him that everything is fine. He thought about it all night. It was unclear whether it was right to involve Keros in the matter, handing over $100 million to a company that uses others at its own discretion, and then ruthlessly gets rid of them when they are no longer needed. And suddenly an idea came into his head. Meanwhile, Carlos's company's CEO, Victor Lenz, arrives. Perhaps the precognition was trying to convince Kyle that it was only a measly $100 million. He advised her to pick them up from Unsong Motors, because he thought they could be turned into something more.